Good evening and welcome to the October Ordinary Council meeting. I'll now ask Councillor Greg James to perform a welcome to country.
Thank you, Mayor Sali and my fellow councillors. I pay respects to our ancestors and I acknowledge our elders past, present and emerging. Can I also acknowledge the Yorta Nations and all its people whose land we meet on today? So on behalf of the Yorta Elders Council, the 16 family groups, the 8 respected tribes who proudly share in the status of traditional owners, I say a very warm welcome to this wonderful land and country. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor James. Item 2, acknowledgement. We, Shepparton City Council, acknowledge the Yorta peoples of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay our respect to their tribal elders. We celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Item 3, privacy notice. This public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. I also welcome members to the gallery this evening as well. Item 4, governance principles. Council considers that the recommendations contained in this agenda gives effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9(2) of the Local Government Act 2020. And these principles are as followed, and they're numbered 1 to 9 on page 6 of the agenda. Councillors, we now go to page 7 of the agenda. Item 5, apologies nil received. Item 6, declarations of conflict of interest. Councillors, do we have any conflicts this evening?
Councillor James.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Yes, thank you, Mayor Sali. I have a declaration of conflict of interest with item 10.3 of our agenda, the Seniors Festival Grants 2022 round 2. There is an organisation in receipt of grant which I have an interest in. I'm currently a board member of that particular organisation.
Good man. Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor.
I wish to declare a conflict of interest on item 12.4, the Shepparton CBD Complementary Parking Initiative 2022, in as much as I have a general conflict of interest, and I'll be declaring that at the right time.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sali. I declare a conflict of interest with item 13.1, our Sporting Future Fund, round 1, 2022 to 2023. I have a conflict of interest in the sense that one of the applicants who have applied for funding, I work under their banner, even though I'm not employed by them, but work under their banner, therefore by association I would have a conflict.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. No other further conflicts? Item 7, confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. Councillors, I will just note that due to the current flood emergency, Council will not be sending a delegation to the Asia Fruit Logistica in Bangkok as considered at the additional Council meeting held on the 4th of October 2022. So that will be added to current minutes. Can I please have someone put forward a recommendation regarding...
I'd like to move the recommendation of the minutes of the 20th of September 2022 Council meeting and 4th of October 2022 additional council meeting as circulated be confirmed, obviously considering the comments that you just made.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Can I please have a councillor second that? Summer. In favour? Motion carried. Item 8, question time, nil received. Item 9, deputations and petitions, nil received. Councillors, we now go to page 8 of the agenda, item 10.1, Mooroopna Community Plan 2022-2026. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor Sali. I'd like to move the recommendation to a motion that the council note the Mooroopna Community Plan 2022-2026 as attached.
Councillor Spinks, can I please have someone second that motion? Councillor Summer. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. While it may seem a little bit, it may seem like odd timing that this is in the middle of what we are all going through, Mooroopna suffering the pain that it is currently going through. Nonetheless, this plan has been in the work for a very long time. There has been a magnitude of effort, energy, resources that has created this plan. And as it stands, it is a great plan in and of itself. And the fact that we are going through this does not make this plan redundant. there will be a time in the very near future where we will need to look at what is going on and what needs to be added into this plan. But that does not stop us from moving forward with this plan and recognising the effort that has gone into creating it and the promise that it has as it stands. One thing I do note reading the report that I think is of great importance is that in developing the revised community plan, the census data was reviewed to consider the social needs of the community. And while many of us do already know this, I think it was new to a lot of people that Mooroopna does have a lot of vulnerability. They have lower household incomes, they have larger minority populations, they have very large Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander populations, and just in general, there is a lot of people living in Mooroopna who have a harder time of things. And that is really important to consider for how we move forward. And I think we're seeing that as well. There are lots of us that knew this before the event happened, the flood event happened. But what we're seeing is also the way that it's impacting a lot of people who exist in that lower socioeconomic category. Some of these streets that are being affected, the lower income, it's this correlation between lower income human beings living in lower lying areas. And we need to look at what that means in disaster proofing and protecting those most at need and those most vulnerable. And bringing them up to a level, it's also picturesque, bringing them up to a level that is of equal safety and capacity as those around them. And so I don't want it to get lost that there are a number of priorities that have been considered within the plan as it stands that benefit, quite frankly, when you benefit the lowest, or if you benefit the most vulnerable, you benefit everybody. Everybody benefits. So advocating for increased public transport options, advocating to improve and develop footpaths and accessibility, shades and general improvements to parks and recreational spaces, more events and activations. These are all things that create great communities. And these are things that we need to look at moving forward to make sure that Mooroopna has on par with everybody else. Mooroopna, as a town all of its own, is an incredible community, and we've seen that in absolute spades in this last couple of weeks. So, may I please have an extension? Thank you. So we need to make sure that we continue to focus on these social and community outcomes that will benefit all. And then we have certainly seen through this disaster the way that a lack of public transport and a lack of access across the causeway for those on bikes and walking has impacted those really basic amenities and how it impacts on people's ability to access and get around and just live their lives. So we need to look at as well, as I mentioned before, we will need to review this with the lens of what has happened. And what do we need to look at from an infrastructure perspective? How do we need to design our areas and get houses into safer neighbourhoods from, you know, the perspective of disasters, and also make sure that these social amenities are not interrupted by these sort of situations. So we need to look at the infrastructure side of things as well. So as it stands right now, very comfortable to support this plan. It is a great plan. It has had a lot of community consultation, and congrats to everybody that contributed to it. And then I also look forward to reviewing it in the very near future to see how we can make it even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spinks. Councillor Summon, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Even after such devastating floods that we've seen, the community plan does remain relevant. Some priorities may have changed. But many of these actions are high level and still able to be rolled out. As identified by Councillor Spinks, it's likely that urban drainage and potentially a second river crossing will be a stronger focus in future years. And it's my hope we get started on this plan as soon as possible, just so that the good people of Mooroopna can begin to re-establish themselves.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Firstly, to the Mooroopna Community Planning Steering Committee, congratulations and well done. They are a very strong representation of Mooroopna for the ones that are lined up there, and they've put an awful lot of work into this. The wish list that they have is categorised into priorities, being high, medium, low and ongoing. And with a population of over 8,000, it is immense with what they're asking for. And I think that it really hits a chord. Of course, as highlighted by Councillor Spinks there, you know, the floods have devastated many parts of Mooroopna. and there may be infrastructural and social support that could now be incorporated in this particular plan. However, the aspirational priorities, I believe, still stack up, and they still provide what I would call hope for the people in Mooroopna.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor Sully. And Councillor Spinks and other previous councillors have spoken highly of Mooroopna. Councillor Adams and I got to know Mooroopna very well in the last, over the flood period. Not to say we haven't been there before, of course, but look, firstly, can I just, to thank the Mooroopna Community Plan Steering Group for their work in identifying the key priorities for the next 5 years. And that's very important for Mooroopna in regards to planning in the future. In line with Council's community planning policy, Mooroopna is one of the 12 community groups in our region, and Councillor Spinks and I had the opportunity to sit on one of those sessions. I found it absolutely exciting to sit on there and listen to what our small towns are doing, and it was just brilliant to listen to what the plan, the focus from here onwards, and it was just really, really good to sit into those forums, and I absolutely enjoyed it. The actions identified within the community plans are the priorities of that particular community. Delivery of these actions is a combined responsibility of that community as well, and businesses, which there are a large number of in Mooroopna, and I think they're attributed to about 90, plus an increasing Friends of the Plan group too as well, which complements the actual community plan itself. Each one of our community groups are supported by council, of course, and council officers who do a great job in supporting the communities. And I absolutely are encouraged by the passion and motivation shown by our community members as well in that process. Mooroopna community is a strong and productive area with a fantastic vision for the future projects. So well done, and I look forward to the future plan, the 5-year plan for Mooroopna as well. Thank you, Mayor Tully.
Thank you, Councillor James. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sully. I'd like to speak to the motion just briefly again. I think Councillor's been covered pretty well, as it is the councillors. I just think this plan is actually more relevant right now because of what's happened and still happening to a degree. The priorities will change, no doubt. I'm just hoping that now we can focus more acutely on some of these high and medium priorities, and we actually deliver it a lot sooner than we may have done before this event. So it's very relevant and fully supported.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Adam. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried on opposed. Councillors, we now go to page 15 of the agenda, item 10.2. Council's role in marking 26 January in 2023 and beyond. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sully. I would like to put forward the following recommendation, and not the one that was printed in the agenda. The following recommendation to read that in relation to Council's role in January 26 activities for 2023 and beyond, Council endorse 1, that Greater Shepparton City Council write to the Prime Minister, the Minister for Home Affairs, other relevant Australian Government ministers, members of Parliament and senators to A, change the date for Australia's National Day from January 26. B, remove the Australian Citizenship Ceremonies Code requirement for the local government councils to conduct citizenship ceremonies on January 26. Point 2, the lowering of the the lowering of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flag to fly at half-mast on 26 January at all council-owned facilities to acknowledge this date as a day of mourning for Aboriginal people. 3, financial and in-kind support for A, Greater Shepparton's Australia Day committees for 2023, B, Survival Day dawn ceremony and recognition of this event in council communications. Point 4 of this recommendation is a review of the Australia Day grant guidelines to encourage and support grant recipients to reflect on Australia's full history, events held on January 26. Point 5, continued community engagement to inform a council decision about A, Australia Day in 2024 and beyond, and B, the development of a program proposal for a day of community celebration for 2024 that is inclusive, reflects the full history of Australia and is culturally respectful.
Thank you, councillor Brophy. Can I have a councillor second that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, councillor.
Sally.
Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sarley. It has been an incredible privilege to have been part of the community stakeholders group and, in a sense, chairing that particular gathering. It was a gathering of truth-telling, of understanding, to listening to what the various stakeholders feel about January 26th, about Australia Day, about citizen awards, and about citizenship ceremonies. There's been widespread public debate, and the rumblings are getting stronger and clearer. A movement is afoot to re-look at this current situation. If, however, the date of Australia Day was moved legislatively by the federal government away from January 26, we would not be here discussing it. However, it currently is, tied to having citizenship ceremonies attached to it as well. There are many more stakeholders we want and need to hear from regarding this, and post this coming January 26 will be appropriate to hear some feedback regarding that. A general, and I mean general consensus, was that the date to most non-Indigenous is not that important. History shows, and people's understanding of why it is, that particular date is extraordinarily low. The key things to celebrate as a community are the magnificent citizens that we have. And it's also the welcoming of people born overseas who now call this land their home and want to become citizens. It is important that we celebrate that annually and we recognise all the great things that both Australia and Greater Shepparton offer. We are advocating to the Australian Government to change the date. We do not want to celebrate a day that hurts, genuinely hurts, a large number of our population, particularly here in Greater Shepparton. I have, over the past two Australia Day celebrations, foreshadowed in my speeches that change is coming. How will it look? I'm not trying to preempt that. But I do know that it will look different, it will be inclusive, and it will be respectful. I would like to thank all the Indigenous and non-Indigenous that contributed to the group discussions. And I thank you very much for their respect, their bravery to be there, and their positive thinking on what is an important and initial step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Brophy. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sally, can I please reserve my right to speak at a later point, please?
No problem.
Can I make an amendment, Mayor Sarley?
What would you like to do, councillor Abdullah?
Okay, so I think everybody has the distributed agenda and the printed agenda copy that was circulated by council. I would like to reinstate or replace point number 5 of Councillor Brophy's motion with the original point number 5 as printed in the agenda and as it's accessible to public. And I'll say what it includes. So point number 5, according to the original officer's recommendation, said continued community engagement to inform. So this is as per the original agenda and the officer's recommendation, but I would like to read it out so that there is no ambiguity.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So point number 5, that continued community engagement to inform a council decision about, number A, whether to mark Australia Day on 26 January from 2024 in the absence of a relevant decision by the Australian government. And number B, a proposal for a day of community celebration for 2024 that is not held on 26 January, and that is inclusive reflects the full history of Australia, and is culturally respectful. I would like to make this amendment, replace point number 5 of the motion that has been moved with this point number 5, which was as per the original council officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Obviously, with the amendment process, would be very happy for you to add any additional words to offer more clarity related to the motion. This is probably a significant change because it is quite different to what Councillor Brophy has put
Point
forward.
of clarification, how so? I've been trying to figure that out.
Well, it's my assumption. So it's probably more on my determination of what is currently proposed by Councillor Brophy and what is in the original motion is
They look the
effectively.
same, just changing words and making it clearer.
If I could offer something,
I'll just.
Yeah, that's fine.
Whether to mark.
No,
26 or
current recommendation, this is mine here.
26th of
Yes, that's mine.
difference.
That's that.
So the point A is whether to mark Australia Day on the 26th of January from 2024. Councillor Brophy has Australia Day in 2024 and beyond. So that's
The same.
a simple inclusion. You know, a proposal for a day of community celebration for 2024 that is not held on January 26 and that is inclusive reflects the full history of the Australia Day and culture. The development of a proposal for a day of community celebration for 24. That's the same. I'm happy to add
This is
that.
specifically saying 26th of January, whereas this is just saying,
Australia Day.
let's look for
Is,
Well, the first one being
Day.
point A, whether to mark Australia Day on the 2026, just maybe Australia Day in 2020.
yeah, they're different.
They're not different. It's making it clearer.
But we don't know what day Australia Day is
Yeah,
and beyond.
well, I think they're different, but
Yeah,
that's your call.
yeah. What you're proposing is very specific. What Councillor Brophy is, you know, open, intended, so I won't accept that amendment.
Okay.
Councillor, are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Councillor Abdullah?
All right, given the amendment has not been accepted, I first of all want to make it very clear that I am speaking against the motion put forward by Councillor Brophy, but perhaps and definitely I'll vote in favor unless something changes at the last minute after hearing from everyone else. And I'm speaking against the motion to get this opportunity to highlight that what are the parts that I agree with and others which have been removed again at the last minute from the officer's recommendation, and they actually changed the intent of the whole conversation and the matter before us. Point number 4 in the motion that is in front of us could have been better worded and clarified and could have given a better clarity around the intention of this whole issue, in the intention of the community consultation, which is for council to whether to mark Australia Day on 26 January from 2024, if there is not a decision by federal government by that time, and also a proposal for a day of community celebration for 2024 that is not held on 26 January. So those are my objections to the motion that is in front of us, that do not clearly specify our intention, that what we wanted to do, why we started this conversation, and why we have landed here. So, so that's the key part, that I feel that the point number 5 in the officer's recommendation was the gist of this whole recommendation, and it has been removed. Hence, I am speaking against the motion. Whereas about the other parts, I support this measure. I support all the other parts, because I support this motion for council to strongly advocate federal government to change the January 26th date for Australia Day celebrations. And meanwhile, also have community engagement to inform a council decision about whether to mark Australia Day on 26 January from 2024 or not. We know that 26 January 1788 is the day when the British flag was raised in Sydney in New South Wales to claim the land as a British colony. January 26 was not about Australia. It was about New South Wales. Australia as a Commonwealth did not exist on January 26, 1788. This date seems arbitrary, as there were other settlers who claimed to be there before and after this date. And of course, our First Nations people who had been on this land for thousand years before January 26, 1788. So the date is not representative and reflective of the current Commonwealth of Australia. And the date is especially hurting and divisive for the First Nations people, as it...
Would you like an extension?
Extension, please. Yeah. So in order to, so the date is not inclusive, and for that we need to advocate strongly, we need to consult with our community that how do we want to go ahead beyond 2024 and make sure that the celebration is inclusive and it allows everybody to participate. And I know that many ratepayers will oppose council's stance and attention to this issue, and once again tell us to stick to the roads, rates, and rubbish instead of meddling in these sensitive national debates. I would like to remind them that local councils are much more than about maintaining roads and rubbish collection, and we have this in this emergency right now, right in front of us. Councils touch on every aspect of the community's well-being, protection, and have a leadership role in standing up and advocating for their communities. Such advocacy does not necessarily require a lot of resources and can be undertaken simultaneously along with maintaining roads and collecting rubbish. So by supporting, so as I've said, I'm speaking against because certain parts I do not agree with, but on the whole, I agree and I support this motion. I feel that by doing this, council is one step forward in its goal of bringing the communities together, being inclusive and leaving no one behind. It's about time we started looking at other alternative options for Australia Day celebrations to build a better Australia based on inclusion and not on division. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor Sali. Honestly, I'm going to come at it from the same intent, but the opposite direction of Councillor Abdullah. I do agree that 0.5 misses the mark, and I'm simply because by leaving out those words, a proposal for a day of community celebration that is not held on 26th of January, I would argue that it is impossible to hold a celebration on the 26th of January that is culturally respectful and that it is inherently disrespectful. So by leaving that out, there is an ambiguity that has missed the mark of the intent of this motion. But moving ahead, I will not oppose what we are doing here. This is an incredible moment for our council and for us as a group and for our community. I did have the absolute honour to be a part of the community consultation that we undertook. I know there will be criticism out there that it was not a community-wide consultation, but that was a deliberate decision to undertake it in this manner. What we were able to do was bring in the key stakeholders and create an environment that had the space and the grace for each member to share their experience, their feelings, their truth in a way that could be contained and respectfully managed, as opposed to the potential wildfire that would occur from an open and uncontrolled community consultation. And from that, we were able to pull out everything that we needed to try and move forward with this moment. We very strongly heard that from the Aboriginal members that were in the room, the 26th of January is a day of trauma. I am so endlessly grateful to those who shared their truth with us. And just the fact that they showed up. It is an incredibly painful thing to turn up and share that with a room full of people who may or may not do anything with that information. So the fact that we're sitting here having this conversation, I think, is an incredibly important moment to recognise. The 26th of January clearly is hurtful. And as far as I'm concerned, and I've said it the entire way along this process, the moment you realise you are hurting someone with your actions, you need to change your actions. The other half of the room was, what we were able to glean is that Australia Day in the larger context has very great importance. There is ceremony and pride and a sense of connection to this beautiful country that we all get to call home. Australia is an incredible place to live, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. And so there are elements that we absolutely need to hold on to of the bigger meaning of what a national day could mean. But there was no real sentiment to maintain that as January 26th. And so it is, for me, it is as clear as day that while you are hurting such a great part of our population and you have no real attachment to it and have the capacity to do something different, please.
Granted.
Thank you so much. You move it. It's as simple as that. And that is what this conversation is all about. And not only do you move it, you do something even greater with it. So we will be moving forward from 2023. We will be lowering the flags, the Aboriginal flags and Torres Strait Islander flags to half-mast to recognise all those who were lost. The trauma of the Aboriginal history is Australian history. We all share this history, the good and the bad of what occurred to create the country that exists today. And we moving forward, this topic has been so divided, and I would argue deliberately so by certain parties, to make it an Aboriginal versus non-Aboriginal issue, and it's not. This should be so much bigger than this. This should be the 26th of January, recognising all of the horrible steps in the path that led us to today and what that means, and apologising and recognising that with a day of mourning. And then we move away and we create something even more incredible. And we do not have to do that as a national thing. We can create something that makes sense for Greater Shepparton, for Yorta Yorta country, something that makes sense to us here, for the people who have lived here their entire lives and call Australia home and have known nowhere else to live. For those who are newly arrived in Australia and have found a safe place to call home and are so proud to be here. For all of those who were here for 60,000 plus years before anyone else rocked up and caused modern Australia, for better or worse. We all stand here today and we have the opportunity to create something way better than barbecues and thongs and flag tattoos. So this is our moment, and I will forever be grateful that I got to sit here in this moment and be a part of the council that did this. While I do think 0.5 could be stronger, I have no qualms in supporting this scene. I look forward to the larger conversation that will now come out from it, and the fact that we, Greater Shepparton, can do this as a regional LGA, when we've seen so many examples that are mostly metro, but we, with the largest Aboriginal population outside of metro, this is just an incredible moment. I'm so proud to be a part of it. I'm so grateful to everybody that turned up and shared their voice with us. And I look forward to community hopefully getting on side with this, because this is a moment in history. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spinks. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Look, firstly, I suppose I'll apologise in advance if I stumble, if I get emotional. This subject is very similar to Stolen Generations Sorry Day, and it's been by my side all my life, the 26th of January. Not only me, but my family, my community. So it is very, very emotional when we talk about these issues, because that particular day is very hurtful for our people and our tribe. I'll see how I go. I should be okay. Look, firstly, can I say a big thank you to the community stakeholders groups. We had representation from the Greater Shepparton Australia Day Committee, and I was really excited about that. And you know, I always, my goal was to have them involved in those discussions, and I'm really pleased that they did attend our at those forums. Our Koori community, which I was invited, you know, was very excited about getting them involved as well. And our elders, it's very important for our elders under that respect structure to have them involved in that discussions too as well. Our council staff and our councillors too as well, and I thank Councillor Spinks, Councillor Summer, and Councillor Brophy too as well for investing in it, and too as well in investing in the passion which I'm getting, you know, and the support that I've got from all the councillors, and I thank every one of them. I want to thank Councillor Brophy for chairing our meetings. They're not easy. It wasn't an easy task, given the sensitive nature of these discussions, of course, and as Councillor Summer and Councillor Spinks could attest to on that night, it was there were sensitive moments. There were moments where it had the potential to go offline, to go the opposite way, but we got it. We pulled it all back together, and I thank everyone that was involved in that too as well. I also want to thank our council staff too as well for their extensive research and providing that to that meeting as well. So just a special mention to them. Look, I was pleased with the outcomes of these meetings, in that the discussions were starting points and there were conversations that we had to have. We had to engage and start these conversations at some stage. So I was really, really pleased with that. The representatives were open, they were honest, and they conducted themselves in a respectful manner. And in general, I was very excited about...
Would you like an extension?
No, I better stop. No, I will have an extension. In general, I was very, you know, I was really pleased, and I got the impression that everyone at that meeting were keen to achieve an outcome, and I think that was great. What is important to point out in this recommendation, and I respect Councillor Abdallah in making some changes to that, and like Councillor Spinks said, yes, I probably do agree with that, but I don't care. It's the intent where we are right now. What is important to point out in this recommendation is there is no intention to change the current format and ceremonies and award day program held on 26th of January 2023 and beyond. And that's really important too, to understand and respect too as well. It is asking for our community to consider and reflect on what this day back in 1788 means to First Nation people. Basically what this day does is it rekindles a lot of pain, a lot of hurt and generational trauma. And it was the start of oppression for our people as well. This is conflicting and confusing evidence of the 1788 landing of the First Fleet, and historians have got it wrong on many occasions and somewhat are inaccurate in regards to the landing where the First Fleet landed. So history itself is very, very distorted, and there's lots of confusion in regards to that. And current curriculum does reflect that too as well, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. Up until 1935, New South Wales was the only state in Australia that recognised the landing of Sydney Cove by the way of a state holiday. It wasn't until after 1935 that all Australian states and territories used the name Australia Day to mark the 26th of January. That's really important to understand. Then in 1994, coming off obviously the excitement of the 1988 bicentennial year, the 26th of January annually became a public holiday across the nation, and, quote, and to be celebrated on the nearest Monday so people could have a long weekend. So obviously the priority was them to make sure that that day coincided with the long weekend. Now, isn't it funny in 2023 how a change has happened? Now this has changed because next year the 26th falls on a Thursday. Doesn't coincide with the long weekend. So,
How long?
run out of time.
Can I?
Okay, thank you. The 26th of January is not a day of celebration for our people. It is considered by our people as a day of mourning. This recommendation is an opportunity for us to join in with what is an increasing movement throughout Australia to eliminate the distress and the pain, and to make Australia Day a day for me and my people to join in and celebrate with everyone in our community, and to remember Aboriginal history is Australian history, and that's what we also got to remember too as well. A younger generation are asking for us to change this day. Quite simply, our schools are wanting this to be incorporated and addressed throughout and across our education curriculum, from early childhood right through to higher education. It is time for us to adhere to and commit to truth-telling and readdress our distorted past and make it right and safe for our people. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor James. I'm actually going to speak because I'm going to take the opportunity to, it's not very often that you will propose a significant change and lead community. We've heard the largest Aboriginal community outside of Metro Melbourne. I also want to thank Councillor Brophy for chairing this. We obviously heard the challenges that you faced through this period of time, so I commend you for that. Thank Councillor Summer, Councillor Spinks, and Councillor James for being on the committee as well. But as I mentioned, it's not very often that you can have someone sitting around the table that is so connected to this significant proposal that is in front of us. And I want to echo the comments of Councillor James and commend him for having the strength in being here, pushing through this and taking this stance. So I commend you, brother. Well done on that as well. So, and echo everything that you have said, and obviously my fellow councillors before that as well. Are there any councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dobson.
What more can you say? But it's interesting that Australia Day is a day, the term Australia Day or a similar name should be, it's like the 4th of July is an American holiday, but we've got Australia Day on the wrong day. And I think the sooner we get rid of that connotation of the 26th of January and Australia Day in the one sentence, better off we'll be. I can just see some of the flack that's going to go around the community over the next few days about what's council doing, meddling in this sort of political upheaval. But I commend the councillors that have spoken about this, because we're not all roads, rates and rubbish. We are about leading the community from time to time into where we think it should go. And this is as plain as the nose on your face. And I just think it's so important. Look, we can debate about a few words here and there, paragraphs and changes and what have you. But the intent is the number one factor. And it is a historic day. And I hope it's a great day for Greater Shepparton and will continue to be, but not on the 26th.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson.
I would like to foreshadow a motion, please, Councillor Sali, that corrects those 7 words that are missing.
Can I propose this? I'm going to propose something to just try and...
Over your life, yeah.
If you would like to propose an alteration to the motion with those additional words, hence why I couldn't accept...
It's got to be the mover.
Yeah, with the acceptance of the mover and the seconder. So if you would rather than do a foreshadow.
Councillor Sali, can I please move an amendment to the
Correct.
alteration? Sorry, I got the word wrong.
You got to direct this to
Councillor Brophy.
Brophy.
Can I please propose an alteration to your motion with the addition in 5.5b, the words "that is not held on 26th January."
So I need consent.
It's not the same as that, effectively.
Yeah, effectively the same as the original motion. So I need the mover and the seconder to approve, and then
You just say correct it.
consent. Councillor Brophy.
I approve.
Councillor James.
Hear that? Yep. Can we speak up, please? Because we can't hear.
Yes, I do approve.
Sorry.
I accept that change, so that will form.
Denny seconded.
Did I? Yeah.
We need someone to second it. No, you only need the mover and the second. Oh, because you second it. Sorry, I apologise. Yep, so you've accepted it as the mover, Councillor Brophy, and you've accepted it as the second. Councillor Adam, would you?
Sounds reasonable, certainly. Yeah.
Okay, we got there in the end.
Effectively, same amendment.
We got there.
Thank you.
Councillor Adam,
Thanks.
would you like to have your...
I think this.
Oh, well, yeah, would you like to speak to the motion? It doesn't matter either way.
Either way.
You have the right to reply. Who would?
No, go for it.
Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you
No problem.
very much, Mayor Sali.
We're all written down here.
Scribbled all over my notes. I hope I can make sense of this. But so I, like many Australians, blindly celebrated Australia Day with national flags, beer and barbecues. If anyone had asked me which day Australia Day was, I probably would not have been able to recall January 26th. The meaning behind who landed where or on what day was totally lost on me at the time. To me, Australia Day was more a celebration than reflection. Also, like many Australians, I assumed our fellow Indigenous celebrate alongside. Australia Day is supposed to be a day that unites us all. However, over the last few years, I've realised this is definitely not the case. I have reached out to Indigenous networks and found most do not celebrate that day. Worse, many do consider January 26 to be a day of mourning. So there'll be some in our broader community who potentially believe changing the date is an attack on mainstream Australian culture, but it is not. This decision is not about following trends, not about leaning left, not about being woke. This is a century-long debate that boils down to common decency. Our ancestors took so much away from Indigenous people, yet they have not lost their spirit. So surely we have room in our hearts to remove one giant emotional trigger and give them back that day. Council did host a number of consultation forums to gauge opinion, but discussions were so raw and triggering that we could not land on any substantive action. And for that reason, I'm really grateful we do have something tangible and durable in this motion, which is lowering the Indigenous flags to half-mast on that day. And the motion also does call for an alternative date to hold an inclusive Australia Day celebration, so the public can be reassured that we're not actually losing a day altogether. We are just being respectful enough to shift it up or down the road. The motion also advocates for removing the Australian Citizenship Ceremonies Code requirement for citizenship ceremonies to be held on that date. I do not believe this point is insurmountable because Australia Day does not need to be tied to citizenship ceremonies at all. To me, these are completely separate events that do not need to be held concurrently. But I'm more than happy to include this in the motion if we can progress discussions and move forward with mutual consensus and intent. So I congratulate Councillor Brophy on his bravery on championing and chairing the committee meetings. They were quite emotional, and I fully support this motion.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I'll just remind that the alteration was made to point 5 only, and Councillor Brophy's motion of 1 to 4 will remain as is.
Yeah.
Make sure that we're clear with that. Councillor Adam, would you like to...
Thanks, Mayor Sali. Look, I'll probably be saying many things that have already been said here today, but I think it's worth saying from my own heart. I support this motion because it is a milestone step in the morally right direction for this and the entire Australian community. I appreciate the work of the January 26 committee that they've done, and also obviously the efforts of Councillor Brophy as the chair. Contributed a lot to this, and the other councillors as well, Councillor Spence, Councillor Summer and Councillor James. I'm sure it wouldn't have been an easy task involved, but I commend them for their bravery on that. However, this committee was formed to address the fundamental question of whether Australia Day should be celebrated on any other day rather than the 26th of January, which point 1 refers to. The key word in this whole debate, in my mind, is the word celebrate. Australia as a nation should and must be celebrated by all Australians for its obvious attributes, which makes it the envy of most of the world. In various world economic rankings, Australia is consistently in the top 5%. Opportunity and security to its citizens on a level second to none. These economic achievements are well worth celebrating by our entire community. However, our entire community have not always been in a social position to enjoy these achievements. I speak of our almost 1 million Indigenous brothers and sisters. This motion in itself cannot repair the pain and suffering of another era, or in fact the pain and suffering that currently exists, but it can and will remove one more barrier to reconciliation. Time doesn't permit me to speak about the history and evolution of January 26 as our National Day of Celebration, and I think the other councillors have covered that already, Councillor James especially. However, anyone who cares to research should conclude that it holds no real significance unless you are a direct descendant of Captain or Commodore Arthur Phillip and wish to celebrate his individual achievements as an accomplished naval officer. When 4% of our nation's population are reminded each year of the cataclysmic events that began unfolding from the 26th of January forward, in fact it was the 7th of February, but that's another debate, Why would we as a nation choose to reinforce that pain for no arguable reason? As a modern progressive country, which I still believe Australia is, changing this date is an obvious, moral and logical response to the sensitivities of our First Nations peoples. I have yet to hear and cannot imagine any cogent argument from anyone who may oppose this change, as no unreasonable concessions are being sought from the wider community for simply changing this date, unless you consider acknowledgement and respect for 1 million of our people a concession. Any current traditions and ceremonies or any future ones that may evolve can be transferred to another date to be agreed on by the Australian people. Yes, I will take it. First time in history, I'll take an extension. In my view, Mayor Sali, there can be no one in this country more offended or affected, if at all, than each and every Indigenous person living in this land. Therefore, the sooner we advocate strongly, along with other local governments, both urban and regional, to the federal government to change the date, the sooner we can relegate one more divisive practice to the annals of our history and move towards an inclusive Australian society that can collectively celebrate Australia Day with the sensitivity, harmony and joy it deserves. For this reason, I support this motion with a very, very strong emphasis on point 1.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Brophy, would you like your right of reply?
Look, thank you, Mayor Sali. I will, just to clarify a few things, and certainly thank you, Councillor Abdullah. I concur with the history lesson that you gave us in respect to going back into that, because I think that's really important that people do understand how that evolved in regards to that. I will state that the revised recommendation that I put forward wasn't last minute, that it had been out there for some time. I know we had the floods in between, but it had been already put forward, and that I was at each of the community stakeholders group, as we've mentioned, and including the Australia Day committees and the Indigenous groups that formed part of that stakeholder group. And the intention was fairly clear that we're moving forward with this. Please make no mistake, being the first regional council to put this forward, that the community and Australia are left in no doubt as to our intent. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, we will now go to the vote.
Can I please ask for this motion to be broken up into 2 parts, please? Point 1 being a separate vote and the remaining 4 points being another vote.
Okay, yes, do that. Councillors, we will now vote on point 1. All those in favour? Carried. Those against? Obviously no. Carried.
Sally,
Yeah.
would I be able to call for, because it's a monumental time, for a division, please?
On point 1?
On point 1.
Okay, all those in favour? Councillor Sali, Councillor Brophy, Councillor James, Councillor Spinks, Councillor Adam. Are you hand up? Councillor Summer? Councillor Summer, Councillor Dobson, Councillor Abdullah. That is carried. We will now vote, councillors, on items 2, 3, 4 and 5 that was obviously the alteration. All those in favour? Motion carried.
Can I call for a division again, please?
I'll just say as above.
Yeah, that's all right.
No?
Councillor Sali, Councillor Brophy, Councillor James, Councillor Spinks, Councillor Adam, Councillor Summer, Councillor Dobson, Councillor Abdullah. Thank you, councillors. Good work. Councillors, we now go to page 20 of the agenda item.
Okay.
Yeah, Councillor 10.3, Seniors Festival Grants 2022, round 2 on page 20 of the agenda. Councillor James?
Yes, as I indicated, Ms. Sally, I do have a conflict of that interest and I'd like to be excused from the agenda item.
Yes, great. No worries. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you, councillors. As mentioned, item 10.3, Seniors Festival Grants 2022, round 2, which is on page 20 of the agenda. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Mayor Sali. Happy to move the recommendation as a motion that council note the successful applicants awarded funding under delegated authority for round 2 of the 2022 Seniors Festival Grant Program as follows and as it reads.
Thank you, councillor Summer. Can I please have a councillor second that motion?
I second that motion, Mayor Sali.
Thank you, councillor Brophy. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I do hope the floods haven't been too disruptive to this, but the Seniors Festival is a highly valued event on our calendar. It offers a suite of information and social opportunities to help seniors live their best lives. We do have an ageing population and most of us are living longer, so I fully support these grants.
Very good, councillor Summer. Councillor, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, thank you, Mayor Sally. Just briefly, that we're noting this, that these small contributions to some of our very worthwhile events are to mark the Seniors Festival. And it's our way of showing the more mature of our community that they are indeed valued. And I think I queried a few of them as they went through, just to make sure that they're all above board. One that highlighted was the Shepparton Athletics Club submissions. And I'm thinking the seniors with the Shepparton Athletics Club, I had visions of 110-metre sprints and javelin throwing, but I've been reassured that it's a little bit more tabloidy sports in terms of that. So that was certainly acceptable. One of the highlights, of course, was having country singer Tanya Kernaghan here in the Golden Valley and entertaining a number of people, the senior citizens, throughout the day. And can I say well done to all those with initiatives that put forward.
Great, thank you, councillor Brophy. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Adam.
Very briefly, Mayor Sally, if you look down the list of these grants and the different activities that will be come from these grants, it's quite amazing actually. There's ukulele playing, there's all sorts of different things. I think in this time that we're experiencing now, these grants are more important than ever, and I'm sure they'll be used very wisely and they'll be a great asset to the groups who receive them.
Great, thank you, councillor Adam. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak to the... Now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Can we please get councillor James, please? If he's there. Councillors, we now go to page 27 of the agenda, item 11.1, 2023 council meeting schedule. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. The council resolves that scheduled council meetings for 2023 continue to be held at 3 p.m. on the third Tuesday of every month at 70 to 90 Wellsford Street, Shepparton. No scheduled council meeting to be held in January 2023, and the scheduled council meeting cycle will be resumed on 21 February 2023.
Thank you, councillor Dobson. Councillor, second that motion. Councillor Abdullah.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
This schedule highlights the fact that we allow our hard-working staff some time off over the Christmas period, gives them time with their family, and also councillors and all those associated with the council. It is the same as what's been the same schedule it's been on for years and years. It's worked very well. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Dobson. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, I mean, this is a very standard motion, and we do this annually. And previously, I mean, of course, there have been other views as well, where some councillors have suggested otherwise, like to have the meetings in January, and also, yeah. So that discussion we've always had, but I think we need to just maintain the current arrangement, and especially in this particular year where everybody, the whole council staff and councillors have been working tirelessly like the rest of the community. So I think it will be good to have a break in January from our council meetings. And again, a reminder that if there's anything urgent, if there's anything which really needs our decision making, then the option of scheduling an additional council meeting is always there. So I'm happy to support this motion.
Thank you, councillor Abdullah. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'm supporting this motion, although I can't go without expressing my concern about no scheduled meetings held in January. We're talking about the norms here, and it's always been the norm for many years, as Councillor Dobson stated. However, I always felt that a meeting in January, however short, is always a good thing. It's in the second half of the month, so it won't affect, I would have thought, holidays, but I couldn't let this pass without saying it, so I did, but I'll still be supporting the motion.
He's getting very nervous. Thank you, councillor.
Solitary man in this.
Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Just very briefly, that the schedule is set, as it was set at the last year for this particular year. And of course, it's been prudent with the delay of this particular meeting, given the regional situation that we have with the impact that we've had. And we've returned, as we have today, to some procedural things to try and get as practical as possible, as soon as possible, back into of things. So even though the schedule is there, it does allow us for changes if major things happen, and I think that's been very prudent, certainly by the council executive, to be able to move that for us. As before, this is consistent. Thank you.
Very good, councillor Brophy. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and approved. Now go to page 30 of the agenda, item 11.2, 2022-2023 Christmas closure. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Summer.
I'll move that the council resolve to close the council offices to members of the public at 3 o'clock p.m. on Friday, 23rd of December 2022, and reopen at 9 a.m. Tuesday, the 3rd of January 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Can I please have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Spinks. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. We have always managed to close at Christmas with no hiccups. I do understand it might be a bit different after the floods. The closure allows staff and councillors well-deserved time off to spend with loved ones. If absolutely necessary, we can call a special meeting to deal with urgent or unexpected items. These meetings have been made much easier due to Zoom, so there should be no barriers for attendance, even on holidays. I think the community has gone through a lot recently, and staff, so we need some time to reflect. I am in favour of closing for Christmas.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Councillor Spinks.
Yes, Sally, can I just point of clarification? This motion is referring to closing the council offices, is it not?
Correct.
Nothing to do with meetings or?
No.
No, that was
the previous one.
agenda item.
Yeah, you just said, spoke, so that's all right. Carry on.
If we had a special meeting, we could do it via Zoom. is the thing, but- Oh, yeah, you're probably right, actually.
Thank you. That's all good. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly to cover one little paragraph in the executive summary, it is important to note that this closure relates mainly to council administration, and many of council services will still be available during this time. Directors will make appropriate arrangements, staffing arrangements, to ensure that council services and programs required to operate during this period continue to do so without interruption. So, you know, it's all well handled, it's all taken care of. And I think it's just a timely reminder that council is not an invisible beast, and in fact is human beings who would like to spend time with their families at this time of year. So fully support.
Thank you, Councillor Spinks. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Dobson.
I'd just like to point out that this motion would allay the fears of Councillor Adam that things will be going on during the month of January, even though the council meetings aren't. So I think you should rest.
That's why I reserve my right to speak sometimes.
Thank you for that clarification. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and opposed. Councillors, we now go to page 33 of the agenda, item 11.3, Annual Report 2021-2022. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Summer.
Yes, thank you. I will move that the council adopt the 2021-2022 annual report for the year ended 30th of June 2022, including the financial statements and performance statement as certified by the Auditor General.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Brophy.
Second that motion, Mayor Sally.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'll make it super brief. It's a document that doesn't get the attention it deserves, but each year we make it available to those of our community who are interested. Basically, it is a report card to the community. It breaks down our demographics, offers clear information, has lovely bold graphics, it offers detail around council services and the organisational structure. So I encourage everyone to take a look because it is worthwhile. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, just taking up what Councillor Summer just said there quite clearly, that this is a statutory requirement and hopefully not a dust collector. A lot of solid work and detail has gone into this particular product. I do encourage people to read it. It's not just words, pictures or graphics. but it is a historical document that snapshots the year that was. Well done to council, to the executive, and all those who contributed to it.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Picker. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you. Only briefly, and I have deja vu, I'm fairly sure I said exactly the same thing last year. But while it is a hefty document, and if you have the will and the time and the inclination, I highly encourage you to have a look through, even if you can just skim. But my big takeaway, I commented in briefings and I'll comment again now, is that there are no skeletons in our closet. Our closet is skeleton-free, and it all is on display in this document. It is truly an incredible account of everything council does, and she's big, but she's awesome, so.
Thank you, councillor Spinks. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Carried on opposed.
I comment.
Councillors, we now go to page 36 of the agenda, item 11.4, child safety and wellbeing policy. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Can I move the recommendation 11.4, child safety and wellbeing policy, which reads that the council adopted child safety and wellbeing policy as attached.
Councillor James. Please have a councillor second that motion. Councillor Brophy.
I'll second that motion, Mayor Sally.
Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. A child safety and wellbeing policy supports the schools to create and maintain a child-safe organisation where children and young people are safe and feel safe. This new policy provides a framework for how schools approach child safety. It also provides clear guidelines for staff, volunteers and community members to ensure a safe environment is created for learning. Council has in place a child safety policy adopted by the council in September 2018. This policy was implemented in response to recommendations made by the Victorian Government Child Safe and Standards Act in 2015. The original Act recommended 7 child safe standards. A recent review of this standards has been increased to 11, which provide more clarity to organisations and set out the minimum requirements to keep children and young people safe. The new policy is compliant with the new standards with additional definitions of the word harm, and a description of each of the 11 standards and actions council will take to comply with each one. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, thank you, Mayor Sally. This is an update from the policy adopted 4 years ago, and as highlighted, it includes a new format of the policy, the definition of the word harm, and of course, the descriptors, as you were explaining regarding the standards, there's now 11, and also actions for the council to comply with that particular policy. Having and still working in the field that child safety is the first priority, I fully endorse this policy wholeheartedly, and it provides our community with surety and understanding and clear direction in this particular area.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? No. We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and opposed. Councillors, we now go to page 38 of the agenda. Item 11.5, Governance Rules 2022. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Thank you, Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Sally. That's right. I move that the council, 1, adopt the governance rules and the election period policy with endorsed changes that have been carried during consideration of this motion in parts. 2, resolve that the governance rules take effect on the 8th of October 2022. And 3, implement the following endorsed changes as noted in parts 1 to 7 of the hard copy document provided to councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Spinks. Second.
Yes, sorry, yes,
All good.
I second that motion.
Please. I just want to make sure that all councillors have a copy, that hard copy in front of them. Councillor, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I might have to speak quite quickly, 6 minutes to get through all of this. So it's basically some changes that have been bothering me for a very long time, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to be able to vote on these in a transparent way. Even if none of them go through, I will be so grateful for the fact that we can actually debate it outright. So the first one, part 1, is about lost motions. It's a new matter that has come into the governance rules that allows the CEO to bring a matter back to council within 3 months of it being lost. Previously, that was not allowed. So I'm okay with that. It is just that I believe it should also have some parameters around what makes it so urgent that it needs to be treated differently. So I've put 2 parameters in here: cannot be safely deferred for 3 months, and the second one, if there's potential legal ramifications. So it's a little bit confusing there, but I'm basically putting some parameters around that, as we do with our own urgent and other business. So that's the first one. And the right of reply, and I might also...
Are we going to vote on these one by one?
No, at the end.
That if the request is made, we can do that, but that not as right now. Councillor Summer is going through reading her motion.
Thank you.
Yes, the right of reply, this is something we've all discussed. All of these we have discussed, but this came from the majority at the time. It just exchanges the right of reply term with closing comment, basically, and that just allows for people to have a closing comment even if there is nobody in opposition to a motion. Number 3, this is a whole new point in here. This is access to resources to safely communicate the intent and avoid any legal repercussions from our own notices of motion. This is not about going to planning and saying, can you please write me a 3-page document on development down the road. No, this is something we've already done. We take it to somebody just to go over it once and just tell us whether or not it would be appropriate for a meeting. That is it. So that one I'm feeling pretty strongly about. Anyway, number 4 was amend submission date for notice of motions from 10 business days to 7 business days. That actually came from the group, not myself. Very straightforward. For B, which is procedure for submitting a notice of motion, this is just removing the clause to call for a report. I find that quite obstructive. It doesn't need to be there because 63.2, which we would retain, reads, the Chief Executive Officer must inform councillors about the potential and legal cost implications of any notice of motion that is submitted in accordance with this Rule 63. So it's really, we already have that in there, so it doesn't need to have a report when we already are notified of the implications. Number 5, notice of motion must be moved as listed in...
Granted.
Must be moved as listed in the agenda. This is an intent to change a notice of motion as its own entity that cannot be changed, not even for spelling mistakes, to be treated as a motion would. Oh, sorry, as a recommendation would. So, sorry, Pete, did you?
No, he didn't say.
No? Okay. Yeah, so it's treated the same as a recommendation. It's basically, a notice of motion will be handled in accordance with Division 7 of Rule 45 of Chapter 2 of these governance rules. It's not a motion until a hand goes in the air that seconds it. Until then, it should be treated like a recommendation. Number 6, how motions should be determined. This allows for an abstained vote to be recorded as such if in the event of a division. That does not, our current policy does not allow that, but we have every right to have an abstained vote, and there are plenty of reasons around it. So it's just reinstating something that we had a right to and now we no longer do in the draft. And number 7 is to include an appendix with the table of procedural motions, which will help us in our meetings be more efficient and informed. And that's it.
Thank you,
I
councillor.
would like to request, if possible, please, Mayor Sally, if we could consider these in parts.
Granted. Can I please have a councillor second that motion? Oh, shoot. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yep, thank you. So just briefly to a couple of the points, just adding further to what Councillor Summer has said. I think that most of them are pretty straightforward and pretty reasonable. To the point, changing right of reply to closing comment, it has been noted that we often can waver in how we discuss a matter, and we may raise points while speaking to it that would be less than favourable and vice versa, and it just gives an opportunity to really summarise the debate, and if anything's been raised during that debate that needs to be just just closed off for the sake of debate. So very supportive of that particular one. The only other one I want to make special mention of is the notice of motion being handled, similar to a recommendation. Ultimately, when a recommendation is put to us, we have the ability to move whatever it is that we choose to move. So there's not really any variation in this. We still trust that our CEO will use his good judgment to call us out on anything that we're doing completely rogue. And so I'm supportive of that, and in general supportive of them all. But what I really want to do as well is congratulate Councillor Summer. This is the sheer volume of work that she has gone and done behind the scenes. This is not new information to us. We have heard about this for our entire council term. I would argue probably the last council term heard about it as well. And the fact that it's now come to the table and what you've been able to do, I know there's been compromise, I know there's been a real effort to do this collaboratively with all councillors, and I really appreciate what you've been able to achieve. I would argue that if you're not, to my fellow councillors, if you're not strongly against something, please don't vote against it just because it's different. The governance rules are ours to create, and they are flexible to an extent. There is nothing here that is not thought through. There's nothing here that is completely wild and is attempting to flip the table on what good counselling looks like. And so if we can just also take this in with the intent that is intended. There was something else, but it's late and I can't remember. Sorry, thank you very much. I don't know, thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Ms. Ali. Just very briefly, hopefully we will go to the breaking up of it, because I commend Councillor Summer putting it forward. I say, like a dog with a bone, she's been after this one for so long to have a number of changes. And while I agree with some of them, I'll obviously disagree with other ones in that. But that's the nature of it. But I do compliment her in putting it forward, putting it in a reasonable fashion, giving us consideration, going through those, going backwards and forwards with governance as well, to try and nut it out. Some things have changed already in the governance rules as we've gone through it, and other things may change tonight. But compliments there to Councillor Summer. As I said, there's some that I absolutely hooked on with, other ones definitely not. But that's the nature of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Brophy. Are there any councillors that would like to speak to the motion? All right, councillors.
Sally, it's not really speaking to it. I just want to clarify on point 6, which is in the event of a division, abstained votes are to be recorded as abstained. They may be recorded as abstained, but effectively they'll be registered as a no vote. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you.
I will.
At this discussion.
We have.
Okay, we will now go to the Councillor Abdullah. Sorry, yeah. Would you like to speak?
I'm just wondering if we can make an amendment to items to number 677, how motions are determined, the same one that Councillor Adam has just mentioned. Include additional dot points in the event of a division. Abstain votes are to be recorded as abstained and voted against. Like have both of these pieces of information in the minutes.
To make it clear, it's still recorded as abstained.
So in the event of a division, abstained votes are to be recorded as abstained, although it would still be noted as a vote against.
Yes.
And what are you proposing?
This one is basically, my understanding is that in the event of a division, abstained votes are to be recorded as abstained, right? But the fact that they are actually counted as voted against is not recorded.
Can I get some, bear with me, can I get some clarification?
Is that something that
Can you please ask, Chris, presuming this gets approved, how would it look from a minutes perspective?
The minutes, Mr Mayor, will record for each person that said yes, their names, each person that voted no, their names, each person that voted as or abstained from voting will record their names, but also in the minutes it will note that those votes counted as a no vote.
Okay.
Covers that.
Okay,
Told you they are.
Yeah, that's his opinion.
it remains as is. Yep,
That's the clarification.
yes, yeah, very, all right, councillors. Councillor Adam,
I know.
come on. All right. Okay, we will now go to the vote. It's late, I get it, not even halfway, just straighten things up. Councillors, we will now go to the vote, and as per the proposal of Councillor Summer, we will do this in parts, in with part one. So this is not for debate, it is simply for and against. So councillors, those in favour of part one? Those against?
Point of clarification. When you say point one.
Part one.
Part one.
Part one.
Part one of, which says that, part one of the, which says that adopt the governance rules and the election period policy within those changes.
No, literally part one.
Part one of the
Your hard copy there, part one. So we will come to 1 and 2 at the end, but
All right, thanks for that.
part one is first. So we will go again. So those in favour of part one? Those against? Did you vote or
No.
Same.
abstain?
You haven't done that bit yet.
It's obviously going to be taken as against, so that's right.
Um,
I'm on the fence with it, so yeah.
Right. Okay, carried. Part one carried. We will now go to part two, right of reply, obviously part, those in favour? Sorry, can you keep your hands up again, sorry? Those against? Carried. Now go to part three, those in favour? Those against? For, I'll maintain my position. Vote against. Lost.
I don't know what I'm voting on there.
Part four,
So what is this?
procedure for submitting a notice of motion. Those in favour?
What's part four?
Part four.
4A you're talking about?
Oh, well, yeah, 4A. Those in favour?
Sorry, point of clarification, is it 4 or 4A?
What's part?
The entirety of 4?
The whole entire.
A.
4A, yeah, those in favour.
A.
Notice of motion.
Yeah, yeah, so those in favour of 4A? Here we got 6. Those against? Carried. 4B? Those in favour? Those against? Lost. Part 5, notice of motion must be moved as listed in the agenda. Those in favour?
Notice of motion must be moved as listed in.
Oh, so moved as listed in the agenda. Those in favour? Those against? Lost. Part 6, our motions are determined. Those in favour? Those against? Again, I'll use my casting vote, maintain my position as against. Part 7, those in favour? Those against? Passed, motion carried. Councillors, we now go to item 1, adopt the governance rules and the election period policy with endorsed changes that have been carried during consideration of this motion in parts. Those in favour?
Oh, did I?
Carried unanimously. Item 2, resolve that the governance rules take effect from 28th of October 2022. Those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Thank you, councillors. Now move on. Councillors, we now go to page 42 of the agenda, item 11.6, Quarter 1 Forecast Review 2022-2023. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Please have someone put that forward as a motion. So Abdullah. Are you moving that motion? Yes, councillor. Yeah.
Yes, I move the motion as printed. I move the recommendation as printed as a motion.
On what page?
It's 42.
Page 42.
Thank you, councillor Abdullah. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Dobson.
I'll second that motion as recommended by Councillor Abdullah on page 42.
Thank you, councillor Dobson. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
To review?
Yep.
So quickly, we have done it before, and again, for this year, quarterly forecast, as we know, is done by our finance team, sitting and reviewing with managers from all the departments on a one-on-one basis. And of course, there have been many pressures that the organization is going through, but organization has, after this discussion, all the briefings, my understanding is that, yes, they have taken a deep dive to find efficiencies, and but of course, there's so many external factors that are beyond our control, such as the fuel, the inflation, the insurance rising costs, and all of that. So that challenge has been there. But basically, some of the highlights of this quarterly review are, and the purpose of the quarterly review is basically to see how we are tracking against the budget and what adjustments need to be done. So some of the highlights include that there has been an increase in the accounting surplus, and that increase in the forecast of accounting surplus is mainly due to an increase in the parking infringement income and some additional operating grants. This additional recurrent income has also contributed to an improvement in the underlying operating deficit, which is actually now forecast to be $19.46 million, and it's an improvement of nearly 10% from the adopted budget. In terms of the revenues, the review has shown that our user fee and charges have been reduced, mainly due to reduced commercial landfill and reduced children's services, mainly in Mooroopna, and that is basically, and it's sad to note that it is actually about the staffing challenges that we are facing, and everybody is once I think Mooroopna Center has more staff, we can get more children, but at the moment in a long day care, there has been a challenge, and that's where the reduced income is coming from. What else? We have expenses where one of the notable ones is that employee cost has decreased, and although it looks good on papers that we are spending less than what we had budgeted, but in actual fact what it means is that due to this across the organization we have reduced, this employee cost has been reduced. So obviously we all know that if the right staff, if the appropriate number of staff is not available to do the services, to deliver the services, then obviously it affects our level of services and productivity and everything. So it's a very tricky bit, whether to be happy or whether to be sad. Then capital work expense shown that it is increased, but basically there's nothing to worry about as such, because the total cost has not changed, or it is mainly due to the Mall Street development project, and it's the timing of the payment of those projects. Due to that timing issue, there has been an increase.
Would you like an extension?
Not really, but just to, yeah, actually I'll try to go on.
Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think it's important that we were able to note to the community that asbestos, there are new fees on asbestos, both for domestic, for various sizes, various quantities. And I think that needs to be got out. It was interesting during the during the flood recovery that our chief exec really hammered home the point that asbestos would be part of the mix of looking at the buildings that were inundated, and this is going to come in. I also note that with the zero increase in the rates that the council determined at the last budget, that this is going to put increased pressure, and I congratulate the council on finding some efficiencies and cost cutting. But I can see coming forward that this whole forecasting will not go out the window, but will be very difficult, because we've got the increased cost of flooding and I know we're going to get some grants towards it, but it will put a whole new layer of expenditure, and I think we've just got to be in mind, and the community's got to be aware that people come wanting money for different areas. We're going to have to be very conservative in our outlook over the next 6 months to 9 months.
Good point. Thank you, councillor Dawson. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Ms. Sally. This forecast was prepared prior to the flooding. It's likely the modelling has shifted quite dramatically in that brief time, but it's too early to amend this forecast to reflect flood impacts. It will be picked up at the second quarter review, we're told. I did want to touch on the $20 million operating deficit because for 2 years running, council moved 0 rate rises, which should probably have sent a clear message to the organisation that we may need to reduce expenditure in operation. We moved 0 rate rises for a very good reason as well. Council does need to pick up some of that heavy lifting being felt among the community with the escalating cost of living, but instead of just, when we get these, it just seems like business as usual. I'm concerned we may be prescriptively following a 10-year financial plan that may not necessarily reflect the needs of our community. The Greater Shepparton City Council Financial Plan 2021 to 2030 is an internal document. It should be a workable document, and it should be reviewed regularly with regard to the impact of broad events such as pandemics, wars, and natural disasters. I do hope there isn't an expectation that we increase rates after this flood to catch up with financial projections. Balancing expectations with decreased income is never easy, but it's part and parcel of running a large organisation such as this. So open to anything, but I do hope we keep that in mind moving forward and keep a close eye on this operating.
Thank you, councillor Summer. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Just really briefly, I just want to explain, for the purpose of anybody watching, the amended charges that are in the recommendation. The unregistered animal release fee was a misprint in the original budget, and it was originally 105, I believe, and has gone up to 110. It was never intended or meant to be 45. That is entirely a misprint. So please don't think we've jacked that price up. It is was never meant to be reflected that way. And it remains consistent, and that fee is important because it helps us to manage good animal management. And further, the asbestos charges, we put that charge, again, that's not a new charge, it's not coming from nowhere. It was already in the adopted budget, but it was at a flat rate of the what is essentially commercial volumes, and what they have now done is bracketed that back to take into account that it may just be people renovating houses or smaller loads that are coming in. So it's actually reduced those fees on how much that you actually are taking to the tip. And it's honestly, it's better for the community that are using that service. It is a new service, so we're learning as we go. And I am very grateful that council has seen that, I suppose, gap in the way we're delivering that service and immediately amended it. So that's what those costs reflect. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Spinks. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. We now go to page 47 of the agenda. Item 11.7, contracts awarded under delegation in September. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'd like to, I move the recommendation 11.7, contracts awarded under delegation in September. The recommendation reads that the council note, 1, that no contracts were awarded under delegation pursuant to a formal tender or quotation process for the reporting period, and number 2, the requests for tenders advertised but not yet awarded.
Make yourself at home, councillor Dobson.
Bring one back for us.
Can I have a councillor second that motion? Thank you, councillor Summer. Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. In number 1, there were no contracts awarded under delegated authority. And in number 2 of the recommendation, there are 6 requests for tenders advertised but not yet awarded. These include upgrades at a busy intersection in Shepparton, a slip lane in Shepparton as well, as shared pathways in Maribna, the Ardmona Resource and Recovery Centre, and re-advertised upgrade at Tallygarupna Children's Centre. 2 are currently under evaluation and the other 4 are now closed. I just wanted to point out, Mayor Sally, at the bottom of these those advertised positions is that no conforming tenders were received in relation to a contract 2251, the SAM Precinct Works, Nature Playground and Barbecue Shelter. As a result, the project has been rescoped and will be delivered utilising a range of resources. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor James. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sali. I wanted to point out 2272, detailed design for Shepparton and Ardmona Resource Recovery Centre upgrades. This is so exciting, and it's been a really long time coming. During my very first term on the Waste and Resource Recovery Group, we had site tours of best practice transfer stations like Eaglehawk. I wrote detailed recommendations for transfer station upgrades in my first term, but that was following a waste expo in Queensland. Sadly, they never eventuated. I guess I'm not quite expert at that. But improved infrastructure will certainly make it easier to separate rubbish for recycling, and presumably it will also reduce the cost to the consumer as well as to council. I hope the second-hand shop's included because it's such a terrific draw card for the Shepparton facility. Really looking forward to what comes back to us because there's so many innovations in the waste space at the moment.
Thank you, councillor Summer. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak to the motion? We will now go to vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 50 of the agenda, item 11.8, ICT desktop hardware. I will now ask our CEO to make comments regarding this recommendation.
Mayor Sali, it's a correction to the figure in the recommendation. Instead of 787,000, that figure should read $881,160.18, including GST.
Councillors, you should all have a hard copy of that in front of you. That now, or the recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? You can.
Motion submitted on page 50 that the council award contract number 2275 ICT desktop hardware renewal to Dell Technologies at approximately $881,000 and the other cents that Peter just mentioned, which I didn't write down.
I'll need you to read out the correct amount, please.
$160.18.
and 18 cents.
Including GST.
GST.
Everyone got there?
Thank you, councillor Adam. Can I please have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Summer. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I will. Look, I looked at this last night and I prepared some nice words about how this has been thoroughly assessed and scrutinised, and then when we changed the figure, I thought, well, that sort of... But that was just a typo to a degree. Yeah, this is something really important, that we need to upgrade our IT stuff. As it has been scrutinised and thoroughly assessed. All the stuff's there. It's been, there's a few different companies. This is not necessarily the cheapest option, but it's the most appropriate one, so I won't go any more detail.
Thank you, councillor Adam.
Right to be done, and we're doing it.
Thank you. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sali. Anyone who relies heavily on desktop hardware at their day job should fully support this. Nothing's more frustrating than mediocre computers. They are very inefficient, and yes, it doesn't make your day very pleasant. Our workers do an important job, and they should be given resources that allow them to perform their role to the best of their ability. I'm not saying our computers are terrible, but the motion does include 275 laptops and 231 desktops to be renewed over a 4-year period. I believe it's a timely and sound investment for our staff.
Thank you, councillor Summer. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Okay, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to agenda item 11.9 on page 56 of the agenda, September 2022 monthly financial report. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Abdullah.
I'll put the recommendation printed on page 56. It says that the council receive and note the September 2022 monthly financial report.
Thank you, councillor Abdullah. Can I have a councillor second that motion?
I'll move that, I'll second that motion.
Councillor Dobson. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just quickly, I mean, and I must admit that I had understood and read that 3 weeks ago before the floods, for the previous meeting. So, and this time around, have just quickly glanced through it. Look, everything is all right, and as we have said that in the quarterly review discussion, that there has been change in the underlying operating deficit, which is now forecast to be 19.46 million, and that's according to that review. And our revenues have I mean, there's a detail, and I'm sure that everybody who wants to read the details, it's there. But the point that I want to make is that our cash, I'll get to the cash position basically, where the cash that we have now, around $22 million, that cash it's comfortable for now, but it also includes restricted cash, which is basically, you know, for example, developers' contribution, which has to be spent on development. And as council, we just need to make sure that our operating deficit is, it gets better. Like we need to come out of that deficit situation, and for that, maybe several sacrifices are needed. And we have to be very aware of how we are spending and what decisions we are making, because, you know, if we start using away our cash reserves to meet our operating expenses, then of course the situation becomes concerning, and we need to just monitor it closely. I think that's all that I would want to say. Otherwise, the reports and the ratios, the financial performance indicators that are there, they are satisfactory. Like we are tracking. Okay.
Thank you, councillor Abdullah. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just a couple of points that I've noted, that, and I'll go to the asset renewal graph, and I thank council for putting it together. The actual renewal upgrade as a percentage of depreciation is 93%, a little bit under that. Our target band is around 126. So as we go through the year, that'll increase, but it'll be interesting, no doubt, going over the next 3 or 4 months with the repairs to roads and infrastructure to do with the floods. I think some of these figures will need to be reallocated, so that'll be interesting to watch as well. I also noticed that our interest rates are slowly creeping up, 2.2, and I reckon within the next 6 months they will be probably heading north of 4%. So that's something that we should be looking for. Let's hope it's that way anyway, because we've got a fair bit of cash there in investments. Cash flows, I noticed, and I did have some figures, but I've left them. The cash flow to date gave us a slightly smaller cash at bank account at the end of September than at the start of September. Always look at cash, the cash account as against the balance sheet. It gives me more of an indication of whether or not the business is operating on its own without grants and things like that. So these are interesting figures if you're interested, which I am. Probably nobody else is, but I like a good balance sheet.
All right, very good. Councillor Dobson, are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 59 of the agenda, item 11.10, public interest disclosure policy. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Dobson.
Yes, I'll move that the council adopt the public interest disclosure policy that we've had a look at as attached.
Councillor Dobson, can I have a councillor second that motion?
Second that motion.
Councillor Adam. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Again, we could call this a statutory piece of documentation, and as the executive summary says, the Protected Disclosure Act of 2012, forming part of the statutory regime for Victoria's integrity reforms, commenced operations in December 2013 and replaced the former Whistleblowers Protection Act of 2001. Effective of 2020, the new Act was amended and re-entitled the Public Interest Disclosure Act. It was last reviewed in December of 2019. The policy has now undergone a rescheduled review with some minor amendments. Key changes, transfer of the policy into Council's current template, rewording of one of the sections to greater clarity of the correct avenue to director disclosure, the introduction of gender-neutral terminology, which is something that I think we should take a lot of pride in, and the minor administrative changes to improve formatting and sentence construction. So that's really, without going into too much, that's the nuts and bolts of the public interest.
Thank you, councillor Dobson. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak?
I'll just add quickly, this policy is about protecting our employees and people that work in our organisation. Just off our own website, it says the Greater Shepparton City Council is committed to the aims and objectives of the Protected Disclosure Act. It does not tolerate improper conduct by its employees, officers or members, taking of reprisals against those who come forward to disclose such conduct. So, as Jeff said, this is a statutory requirement. It's been reviewed, we've made some additions, it's tighter, it's clearer and it's more protective.
Thank you, councillor Adam. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Just to expand a little bit further on that, it also covers the public and the interaction. So it's really that wholly inclusive around anything council related, whether interacting from or to. So it's much bigger than simply just councillors, and it's really all encompassing of any human being inside or outside of council. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Spinks.
It started strong.
Are there any councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried on. Councillors, we now go to page 62 of the agenda.
Yes, Sally, could I possibly suggest a 5-minute break if it's supported by the fellow councillors? I know we're trying to get out of here, but it's a very tired room.
You know what? You said what I was thinking. I approve that. All right, we'll adjourn the meeting. We'll adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Sally.
I'm starting to get fidgety. I'm starting to move my bag. Welcome back. Councillors, we now go to page 62 of the agenda, item 12.1, adoption of the Calder Woodburn Memorial Avenue Advisory Committee terms of reference and appointment of committee representatives. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'd like to put forward that the council adopt the revised terms of reference for the Calder Woodburn Memorial Avenue Advisory Committee as attached, and 2, appoint the following community representatives to the Calder Woodburn Memorial Avenue Advisory Committee for a 3-year term commencing the 28th of October 2022 and concluding on the 27th of September 2025, that being Jan Sinclair, John Head, Julie Jackson, Mark Reynolds and Terry Cowley.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. It is a committee that I'd been appointed to and haven't met yet with, because when I look through it, and I've certainly chased it up a fair bit, that the advisory committee last met in August 2018. So it's been over 4 years since they've met, and since then Council and the Department of Transport have attempted to engage multiple consultants to undertake the condition assessment of the Memorial Avenue to better understand the works that are required for restoration. There's been an enormous amount of changing with the highway and the duplication there. There's also been obviously flooding in the area. There's a whole range of things that have happened. But as part of a resolution back in 2017, the council wanted to put forward about, specifically what they wanted to cover, and that was recommendations to the council, the Department of Transport and other agencies regarding ongoing conservation of the Memorial Avenue, and if requested, to give advice on specific issues. In making any of the recommendations, act consistently with the objectives of the committee, assist council in resourcing funding opportunities to maintain, enhance and conserve the Memorial Avenue, liaise with all the relevant agencies to ensure the appropriate ongoing conservation of the memorial, and seek and advance can conserve cultural heritage and environmental attributes to the Memorial Avenue. In going forward with that, we've now got a new terms of reference. In September 2022, the council officers have assessed the nominations that have been received and the selection criteria. And the selection criteria, demonstrated their interest in conservation and environmental of the heritage assets and their experience and their ability to that. I know pretty much most of those that have been nominated to be on that particular committee. They're people of great integrity and great community mindedness, and I wish them all the very best and hope we see some meetings in the future.
Thank you, councillor Brophy. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sali. For the purpose of anybody who is not familiar with the Calder Woodburn Memorial Avenue, it's Australia's longest eucalyptus memorial avenue comprising over 2,400 native trees, and it's included in the Victorian Heritage Register. The original plantings were undertaken between 1945 and 1949 by one man, James Lewis Fenton Woodburn, to honour his son and all other local servicemen from the Goulburn Valley who lost their lives in World War II. It consists of 4 rows of mature native eucalyptus trees running for nearly 20 kilometres and is the grandest and largest of the Second World War commemorative plantings in Victoria. It's important because it only uses Australia's native trees. So the integrity of this important environmental corridor has been compromised over time, with the loss of native trees and introduction of weeds. We have trouble engaging consultants for the purpose of assessment because it really is such a niche project. So I'm hopeful we can see more traction on this. We need leadership and clear direction. Some of the names proposed for this committee could absolutely successfully advocate for improved maintenance and restoration grants. Not necessarily supportive of councillors not having a vote, but that could be amended in future reviews if required. As it stands, I think this is our best chance of making something beautiful.
Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and approved. Councillors, we now go to page 68 of the agenda, item 12.2, adoption of Greater Shepparton Cultural Heritage Awards Guidelines 2022. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Mayor Sali. I'll move that the council adopt the Cultural Heritage Award Guidelines 2022 as attached.
Thank you. Can I have someone second that motion?
Second the motion, Mayor Sali.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sali. As we know, Greater Shepparton is not necessarily famous for its abundant heritage. So much of what we had is now lost, most recently with the Shepparton Hotel. The purpose of these awards is to identify, recognise and celebrate the heritage that does still exist. These could be tangible, such as structures, landscapes, literature or monuments, which is traditionally known as heritage, or they could be intangible, such as folklore or traditions, language and knowledge. There's 10 categories that span quite a range of things, and each will be assessed by the Heritage Committee. I encourage anyone with ideas or interest to apply or come along to the awards event for information.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just a quick synopsis. It's about the Cultural Heritage Awards. The guidelines have slightly changed. Basically, without going through the whole list, 2 categories have been added: Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural heritage and Category 9 community and multicultural events and tourism to the existing numerous ones that already were there.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? That would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Really briefly, I just want to also expand once again on Councillor Adams' comments. I think that the separation of community, multicultural and Indigenous events and tourism category into its 2 separate individually standing categories is an important thing. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and community and multicultural topics are very separate things, and they each deserve to stand on their own in their own right. So well done to the committee for recognising that and making that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spinks. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? We will now go to vote. All those in favour? Opposed? Councillors, we now go to page 73 of the agenda, item 12.2, Domestic Animal Management Plan 2022 to 2025. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Councillor Sali. It's a little different. I'm adding a dot point. So the council I move that the council adopt the Domestic Animal Management Plan 2022-2025 as attached, with an extra dot point, include provision to consider feasibility of an outdoor no-kill cat shelter in future years. It should be inserted under key activities for euthanasia on page 15 of the Domestic Animal Management Plan.
Okay, that's obviously changed, which is fine. Can you just read, because we don't have a copy of that, can you just read out the additional item?
Yep, I will. Would you like me to write it out? Is that part of the governance rules where I'd have to write it out?
They don't take effect till tomorrow.
No, they don't take effect till tomorrow, but if you can read it out.
Yeah.
Is that something that, and
Yeah.
just slowly, and then that way we can,
Include provision to consider feasibility of an outdoor no-kill cat shelter in future years. To be inserted under key activities for euthanasia on page 15 of the Domestic Animal Management Plan.
Councillor Summer, can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Spinks. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'm just going to concentrate on this one point. It's not new. I have been speaking about it and doing research and speaking to staff about it. The slides possibly have a bit to do with how this was not in the actual plan itself, but it's not actually asking for much. We know that animal management is woefully under-resourced regarding the spread of feral cat populations. We know cats are a leading cause of native animal extinction. We're reaching stray numbers in epidemic proportions and must act. One cat can produce 25 kittens during its lifetime. Humans introduce cats, so arguably we're responsible for their well-being. A no-kill facility would significantly reduce barriers in surrendering animals and potentially garner donations, legacies, volunteers, memberships, school educations, and animal sponsorships. There are numerous not-for-profit models running successfully throughout the world, so it's not something that necessarily has to be led by council. I'm not asking for it to be immediately actioned. It's merely a request to consider its feasibility, because I certainly think it's worth investigating.
Thank you, councillor Summer. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor Sally. The DAMP, love an acronym, the DAMP itself is an excellent document that we are a community of animal lovers. Most of us have them, and most of us have encountered good animals, bad animals otherwise, though I do argue there are no bad animals, only bad owners. But this covers a range of issues and impacts for the animal management team to focus on moving forward. So as a plan itself, it's excellent. The work that's been done is excellent and to be commended. And I do support the addition of Councillor Summers, or Councillor Summers' additional point. I've had a look at, there's an example that Councillor Summers shared with us of a sanctuary that exists in Hawaii. It's a pretty incredible initiative, but it is entirely volunteer, a volunteer organisation. And I'm not convinced that that sort of initiative is, council core business. I'm not convinced that is something that we would pursue, but I absolutely support exploring the idea. It's something that comes up in River Connect all the time, the impact that feral cats, stray cats cause to our native wildlife. They are, as Councillor Summer highlighted, a huge issue in our community, in all communities, and we need to be looking at any option to try to curtail this issue. So all options on the table, and I'm very happy to support exploring that idea.
Thank you, councillor Spinks. Are there any sense?
Could I just foreshadow a motion, potentially, if this one doesn't get over the line?
Sorry, hang on a second, I'll just cancel that. Shadow, no problem. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors like to speak against the motion? No. Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? I might just speak briefly against it, if that's okay. I get what you're trying to do, councillor Summer, but obviously the provision is to consider the feasibility, and I'm just concerned that you might be giving yourself an expectation that it could be done in the...
In future years. So.
So there is because council staff could obviously consider it and obviously reject that consideration, and you'd be comfortable with that?
Yes, of course, we'll deal with that when yes, as long as it's given proper consideration.
Okay. Councillors, are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? I'll maintain my position of against, so motion lost. We will now come back to the foreshadowed motion.
Mayor Sally, the motion before us now with that council adopt the Domestic Animal Management Plan 2022-2025 as attached.
Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
This time I'll say briefly, and I will be brief. There's a lot of information there. It's all about our response to the feedback summaries of all the different components of animal management. Just briefly on what Councillor Summer was saying, cat management is still fairly well controlled there, and having a no-kill, as you call it, which is a very harsh term to use, but that's necessarily not going to address the feral cat problem, to be honest. That would require a proper feral cat process that a lot of other councils do actually have. That's not something we can't have. That's something we may be able to. Councillor. Anyway, I might extend that in.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Dawson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just for those people who are involved with the Australian Botanic Gardens, they are asking us to consider a specific council order prohibiting dogs and cats is required for the entire site. And I noticed that the review of the current Domestic Animals Act orders regarding dogs at Botanic Gardens. So I appreciate the fact that we are looking at it. I'm not saying anything's going to be done about it to change the existing situation, but the committee out there are very keen to minimise the effect of dogs and cats in the Australian Botanic Gardens. There's a lot of rare and endangered species of plants out there, and it's hard to control it.
Thank you, Councillor Dawson. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Summer.
Just in regard to this cat shelter, even though it's off the table, not addressing the current cat population, it certainly does. There's been many instances where people will not take their cat to the transfer station in fear of it getting killed. And there's a huge semi-feral cat population that is owned but not owned. These cats, they're not socialised. There's nowhere they can go safely to be put somewhere. You can't just expect them to disappear. They go to the shelter and then the inevitable happens. Whereas a no-kill place, all they do is live out their lives. They'd be de-sexed, they would live out their lives, they would not live, it's a cycle. So after the probably first generation, that shelter would be halved or quartered. So it would be something that would help all the cat population. But obviously that's not a priority, which is okay. Thank you for allowing me to speak about it.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 81 of the agenda, item 12.4, Shepparton CBD Complementary Parking Initiative 2.
I declare a conflict of interest on item 12.4. That one.
Councillors, there is a recommendation on page 81 of the agenda. Can I please put forward our motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'd like to put forward a revised recommendation as to the one that was printed in the agenda. And I have circulated to fellow councillors. So my revised recommendation would state on 12.4 that Council 1 resolve to undertake a free complimentary on-street car parking initiative in the Shepparton CBD from the 1st of December 2022 to the 31st of January 2023. And 2, review the Shepparton CBD parking strategy of 2020 to include additional parking boundaries within the Shepparton CBD and to implement free complimentary parking on-street in the CBD for the months of December and January.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Can I have a councillor second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I think what we need in regards to complementary parking is clear and directive, because it has been very ambiguous over the last few years. The rationale around paid parking, why do we have paid parking? Well, it's not as a revenue raiser. A lot of people think that, and of course there are budgetary constraints, but the fundamental philosophy is to move the traffic through, to get them through, and not to be just sitting there, whether it be employees of businesses in the area or someone just leave their car there for the day. It's to move the traffic through so that you get far more people and far more movement of traffic throughout that particular precinct. The parking strategy was passed 2.5 years ago, and we have had ongoing debate both within and outside council, merits perhaps even the 12-month complementary parking. And consideration had been given certainly at last year's budget, which we passed as well, as to whether we would look at that. However, looking at all the data, the analysis and the forecast budgetary pressures that we have, a far more palatable and compromised position is that a 2-month parking complementary on street happen every year, being December and June. Basically a gift to the residents, if you like, and to the visitors from Greater Shepparton City Council. And obviously to the retailers, because January sees trades, industry, schools, etc. on holidays, and therefore lower patronage and the demand on parking. So it's a boost to that particular month as well as having the December. It will hopefully take away the ambiguity we have had over the last few years, be it one year we had 1 month of complimentary parking, another year we had 2 months, and then the last one we had 4 months, all for various reasons, but we need to take that ambiguity away. We need certainty and a review of the 2020 strategy, and I am sure that that will support certainly the initiative that we have, the off-street parking, to continue as complementary, and incorporate some additional parking spaces that have been added to the CBD since that particular report came out. And it was passed. And it will ensure, I'm sure, complementary parking will continue to be timed zones and will support both loading and disability spaces as well. That's hence why I'm putting this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Look, I mean, I've always been a campaigner for free parking, and I think other councillors would know that and understand that's part of my campaign when I stood. I'm fully aware of the impacts of lost revenue, and I know quite well from paid the loss of revenue from paid parking and the cost to council for off-street parking, and it has been accounted for in the council's budget. And an extra month may require a new CBD parking strategy. We've been bounced from, and as Councillor Brophy said, we've bounced from 2 months, 4 months, now back to 1 month. I just feel that 1 month is not enough for our community. We'll have just completed the new mall, and there will be many of our community coming into the CBD to shop and to utilise our new assets, and they'll be here to look at the mall, and they'll be here looking for somewhere to park. And during that period, as we all know, it's a busy time. We've got lots and lots of schools closures breaking up, and we've got our community who will be wanting to support our traders in that area, and we have visitors coming into the town as well. So, I would like them to come into the CBD and support our traders as well. I don't want to penalise them. I want to encourage them to come into the CBD to have a look at our CBD and support the traders too as well, because the traders have been suffering for the whole, for the whole 8 to 9 months whilst we've had to build the new mall in place. Anyway, I'm fully supporting 2 months.
Thank you, Councillor James. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Bill?
So, basically, I would like to speak against the motion that has been put forward by Councillor Brophy, because I do not believe that currently looking at the financial sustainability of the organisation, this is not the best decision. We have had this, we have been through this discussion and we have debated over it for so many years, and for the past few years we have been doing 1 month complimentary or 2 months or 4 months and going back and forth, but we have not been in a stable position to seriously and carefully consider all the financial impacts and then make a long-term decision. I think looking at the report and everything, and you have also realized that it is causing all the, there is a financial impact. The existing complimentary off-street car park that was offered a couple of years itself is costing council $20,000 to $50,000 per year in lost income, and the provision of parking for only December has a financial impact of approximately $72,000, and then there's on top of that an additional $90,000 in lost income from failure to pay infringement revenue. So all of this is basically what it's saying is that only for that complimentary parking, off-street car parking, and this 1 month complimentary parking is coming with a financial cost. And council has also undertaken this economic analysis to see that for this or the previous in the previous times when we have implemented complimentary parking, what has been the outcome, right? And whether the businesses have really benefited from this complimentary car parking arrangements in the CBD. And basically that analysis is saying that the overall change in the spending in Shepparton is not significantly impacted by introducing 1 month or 2 month or 4 months complimentary parking. So again, so my question would be then, what are the grounds, what are the justifications for implementing it for beyond 1 month? This, and I believe that we need to take into account the fact that because of all that loss of income, if we cannot use that income for other strategies and for improvements in the CBD and for other like school crossing program, which is funded out of this income, then what will be the impact? The impact will be that we will need to cover these shortfalls from another area. That means we'll need to cut our expenses from other areas. Now, can I have some
Yep, granted.
Yeah, and the fact is that in the CBD, we have already spent and invested millions of dollars in Mott Street mall redevelopment, right? We need to wait and see the outcomes before throwing more dollars into the CBD, because it's not as if we are, we are giving gifts to every part of the community. Councillor Brophy, you mentioned that let it be the gift to residents. Well, this gift, I think, can be given in many other forms as well, because we know that there's so many high priority needs from different parts of the communities, and those needs are unmet. So why is it that we are only focusing and most of our attention is on this side of the town and on the CBD? I believe that given the millions of dollars that has already been spent recently, we are going to get this beautiful Mott Street Mall redevelopment. Just wait and do not make any hasty decisions. And for now, I would, I just feel that 2 months is just not a wise decision. It's not going to. We have a responsibility for the financial sustainability of this organization, and we should not forget that this is. We should look at it with all the due diligence.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Spence.
Thank you, Mayor Sali. Realistically, my personal opinion would be that we should not have free parking at all, because, someone had to say it. There's no such thing as free parking. Ultimately, the CBD is a unique environment. It has to have parking, timed parking, because of the nature of the way it's designed, the way the businesses would use the parks and simply take up those in front of things. So it has to be timed, and I support it being user pay to fund that. I understand that once upon a time it wasn't, so that budget line wasn't in our budget, but it is now, and the reality is if we take that out, that money has to come from somewhere else, and I do not support that happening. So it ultimately is coming down to compromise. And what we're being asked to do today is to finally decide what this will look like moving forward, one way or the other, whatever it ends up looking like from this debate. That's what the ultimate decision needs to be here, because the to and froing that's happened over the last few years means that none of the other really great initiatives within the parking strategy can be implemented. It is holding us back from all of the other really cool things that would modernise our CBD, or what parking looks like in our CBD. As Councillor Abdullah mentioned, there is, we've done the data, and the data shows no significant benefit to the community, to the retailers of the CBD. It's just this kind of mentally acknowledged thing, I think. It's something we think happens, but the data does not show that it actually supports it. But having said that, while the current parking strategy says 1 month, I do support that if you're going to do one, you may as well do two, because ultimately the way people utilise the CBD over that period is we often have we have a carousel that gets set up in that used to get set up in the mall. We used to bring a lot of families in. It became a real school holidays sort of thing. So as a parent of kids that took my kids in there to hang out and get ice creams and whatever it was, that often is the only time I use that space. And so I support extending the December to the January if you're going to bother to have it at all. Then you may as well have the 2 months. But sticking with that, which I believe is Councillor Brophy's intent through this motion, is that it will embed it moving forward, so that this discussion, I can almost guarantee that the parking reference group and the chamber will continue to approach us, because if you don't ask, you don't know, right? So why not? I don't blame them. But we will have a firm stance that we can move forward with, and it means the council staff can get on with the rest of what they'd like to achieve. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Spinks. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Adam?
I'd like to speak against the motion.
Yeah.
Mayor Sali, not because I haven't got a generous heart as much as Councillor Murphy has. I'd like to give, in fact, I'd rather think ultimately we should have free parking, full stop. That's it, and not have this debate every second year. However, that at this point in time is probably not financially advisable. However, I think the 1 month is sufficient. As Councillor Abdullah said, we've just spent millions on this mall. That's also added additional parking in the mall. We shouldn't lose sight of that. So the whole purpose of parking was to get people to move through the actual parks, to get more people into the CBD. I'd like to wait and see how this mall affects that whole process. I don't think we really do need it at all. I think 12 months, 1 month is sufficient. It's for the Christmas period. Yeah, I really can't add much more to it. The mall is the key factor here, I think. We'll see how that pans out. But I'd like to believe Councillor Spinks to say this is the last time we'll discuss it.
Good luck with that.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Ms. I'm speaking against it, and it's not because of our financial sustainability either. The revenue we take is a pretty small fraction when we're faced with a $20 million operating budget. I also don't agree that it has to be user pays. I do think parking was free before we decided to put parking meters in there, and we pay enough in rates, and driving for many of us is not a choice, it's an absolute necessity, especially people in the urban fringes. So I'm voting against it because there's been too much chopping and changing of dates for free parking. It's confusing to the public, and it does put them at risk of infringements. I also can't understand why we continue to offer this during the busiest months of the year. Parking really should be more regulated during that time. If we're not charging parking fees to regulate that busy traffic, then why are we charging it at all? And that brings us to the broader question of whether we continue to implement paid parking or make it free indefinitely. As stated, there was a qualitative survey done by the Chamber of Commerce that offered support for the initiative, but our own quantitative data shows shopping trends do not change. So whilst we're installing parking meters at a cost into our brand new mall to welcome all these tourists, we're worried about the revenue we bring in, is the message I'm hearing from here, and I hope I'm wrong. It's a tricky one, but I'm comfortable with 1 month's gratis at this point. I think that's quite generous until we can actually land on a yes or no to having paid parking at all.
Thank you, Councillor Summer.
Ollie, can I foreshadow a motion, please? I forgot to say that earlier on. Thank you. Lost it.
Councillor Brophy, would you like your right to reply?
Look, thank you, Mayor Sarvey, absolutely. Certainly not dismissing the budgetary concerns that have been raised and that. I mean, the philosophy is wrong in terms of what we're looking at this in purely dollars and cents and income. The philosophy is to move traffic, and we will still need parking inspectors, and it comes at a cost. We have parking meters again in the very first place. We have to look as to why. Before parking, what income was derived from it? Before parking meters were there was never any income derived from it. So it's become an insidious ask for revenue and to support it. I think what people are sort of missing in the sense is that I'm trying to take away the ambiguity of, you know, having these different months and to actually have a set 2-month period, and everybody knows that from here onwards, hopefully. And that being from February through to November is business as usual. Use the PayStay app. You know, you come in and do business as usual, but we know that we actually have the shopping experience, and that's what the intangible gift is, the shopping experience in December and in January to encourage people to come in, and particularly in January as well. The prescriptive and the narrow data that we've received about income from the retailers does not really underlie what the actual value is of that shopping experience. It may, in some, it was fairly prescriptive and it was fairly narrow in terms of the data that was collected from credit cards, etc. So you haven't got that cash economy that's come through. So I think that that the data may well be not exactly what we see it as to being, and I think it's an investment. It's an investment of getting people in there. Yes, there's been millions put into this particular project for the Mall revitalisation, but of course a lot of that was from the federal government as well, not just all from council, of course. So I'm certainly supportive of this, the 2 months, because I think that gives much more clarity and going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Motion carried. Councillors, we now go to page 93 of the agenda, item 12.5. Oh, sorry, yeah, can we get Councillor Dobson back? Sorry about that. Sorry, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Councillors, we now go to page 93 of the agenda, item 12.5, GV Link detailed design. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Dobson.
Yes, I'll move that the council allocate funding to complete a revised detailed design for GV Link at 250 Talamba Road, Mooroopna.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, can I please have someone second that motion? Councillor Brophy. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
This has the potential to be one of the most exciting business inclusions in Greater Shepparton that we've had for a long time, other than SPC. This is a big parcel of land that's sitting out there at the moment, and it has a number of attributes, and two of them, one of them in particular is the rail attribute. It lies adjacent to the rail line, the upgraded rail line that is now seeing Velocity trains start next month. But it also has the potential to be part of, in fact, the bypass road goes right through the middle of it. This is a big parcel of land which is above flood level, and there is a section on the eastern side of the railway tracks which would be used as a retardation basin, and in particular at the moment it has been leased, as I understand, to a company to do solar panels. So we've already started. But the land has been sitting there for a long time waiting for something to happen, and at long last there is a potential for something to happen with that land that is going to really build the communities of Talamba and Murchison and Tatura and Mooroopna. And that is, we won't go into the business, but it is a big expansion of the business. What we're asking for now is a sum of money to do some detailed design work, because the work that was done some years ago is now out of whack. So what we're saying is that if we put some money to the detailed design and put that to the capital cost of this land, that adds to the value of the land. It's a bit like if you were going to, you had a block of land and you wanted to sell it, for example, and it was just a bare block of land. But if you put a planning permit or a building permit or a plan of a house or a plan of something with it, I can guarantee you that the value of the land will go up and the asking price will go up and it'll be much easier to sell. And so what the detailed design does here is to add value to the land out there with the potential that the likes of which we haven't seen for many a long day. And as I say, it's not so much for Shepparton, but it is for the Mooroopnas, Taturas and those areas out there. Our logistics and freight industry at the moment is clogged up on the eastern side of Shepparton, Doyle's Road as we know it, the bypass road there. What this would do, if we could, when we get this going, this will unclog the logistics. Yes,
Granted.
this will unclog the logistics and the transport factors that now rely heavily on Shepparton. And so, as I say, this is probably, in the years that I've been interested in Greater Shepparton City Council, this particular piece of infrastructure and the next section of it, the next aspect of it, is very important to it. So, as the report says, to better respond to the inquiries into further council's understanding of the likely development construction costs and improve feasibility of the project, officers have commenced a review of the regional design, and that's what this does. It doesn't put us into anything great, except puts us in a position to do something with this piece of land. The last piece of land, the last design was over-designed, and it wasn't fit for purpose in today's modern age. So we've also having it valued, and council has engaged Spire to undertake a high-level review of the potential development options to progress the development. So this is in the very baby steps, very formative stages of the next phase of this piece of land, and I really do commend this infrastructure. I commend this this motion to council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dobson. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sarley. Looking at the detailed design, and the first thing we look at is the cost of how much the detailed design is. And it's pretty expensive, but that is the cost of business. The potential return after getting this detailed design up and running, and the potential suitors that may come on board after that certainly outweighs the particular cost here. For nearly 2 decades, this place has been really very much a white elephant. And so really we get to the point where we either make it or we break it. So we've got to make a decision here in regards to that. This land is a valuable asset, and turning it into a logistics development, open to business, detailed design, and signals to the potential investors that we are open for business, that we want your interest, we want your investment into our infrastructure and our community. And I look forward to seeing this expansive parcel of land developing, bringing in personnel, bringing in construction, bringing in transport, rail upgrades, and a focus on us, the food bowl, and the vibrant heartbeat of Victoria.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Mayor Sarley. Lofty goal, but large operating deficit and questionable history of handling large projects. Now is not the time.
Yeah.
Overruns 7 million on the sports city.
Point of order. Councillor Summer.
Stanmark Gallery was more than half of what was.
Councillor Summer.
All relevant things when we are discussing potential costs is.
Retract that early comment, and then you can proceed with those other.
I retract the comments. So now is not the time to be sinking $500,000 into GB Link. We have already spent over $10 million on this project with no result, because not one business was interested after that entire process. You all just spoke about parking revenue potentially keeping us solvent. How can you support this? How? It's just mind-blowing. We have a current standing motion that stipulates no further action be taken on GV Link until a tenant is secured or a bypass constructed. We have not met either of those provisions. So essentially, we are ignoring a standing motion. We may or may not have one party interested now, but how can we commit $500,000? A contract needs to be signed. We need to have sold most of those lots before we could possibly go ahead with something like this, because it's not our money, it's the ratepayers' money. We should not be risking that money. So I'd like to remind council about our fiduciary duty to the public. Attracting large-scale industry is not our core business. And for the life of me, I can't understand how this aligns with our supposed climate emergency. Once we commit this money, GB Link will become a financial runaway train that we will have very little control over. I watched this during SAM, and I have no reason to believe that the system has improved. Once bitten, twice shy. Personally, I think we should instead commence an expression of interest process to sell the land to a developer. This land will never again be more valuable. It's already zoned, we've got preliminary plans in place, industrial land is in short supply. I think it's too risky and too expensive to take this on ourselves. I don't know why we would. We've tried developing activities up in Mooroopna for residential. This is commercial, it's no different, but it was a mixed bag. I implore you all, please do not support this motion. This is not I don't want to go through what is potentially, yeah, okay, look, okay, but I am against it, and I want to make that perfectly clear. It is a foolish decision.
Thank you, councillor Summer. Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor Sali. I had my reservations before the flood event on spending $500,000, and I certainly do not think we can move forward with it right now. I don't think this GV Link makes sense. I think that 20 years ago when this process began, maybe it did, but I think that if we look at it with the fresh eyes of today, that it no longer does. The GV Link industrial park is heavily reliant on so many what-ifs. It needs to have the bypass go through, which we cannot get confirmation of the first stage of the bypass, let alone not even having conversations about the second stage that would go through. It is heavily reliant on the train line, there being a hub put in there. That's not being talked about at all. There is such, it's all a what if about what the potential income could be off the back of it. But there's nothing, as Councillor Summer said, there's nothing actually putting that in stone yet. My biggest hang up that I have is the fact that without the bypass, without that train hub, what we are committing to is more trucks going through Murchison and Mooroopna, which is exactly the thing they're trying to stop. Murchison is a little country town that is has told us they want to bypass around the centre of their town to get those trucks out of it. Mooroopna should be a calm little main street, but instead is a highway of trucks passing through. What they are trying to achieve as towns would be completely undermined by this development. And I just think it stems completely from the fact that it is in the wrong location. If it was on the east side, it would make so much sense. It'd be a completely different conversation, but it's not, and we're talking about this, and we're talking about where it is. The other part of it is, I genuinely believe that this is not core council business. Council are not developers. I also believe that if this was a housing development, and look, real estate background, correct me if I'm wrong, but housing developments don't even with a stage until they have all lots sold, further to what Councillor Summer said. And we're not exploring that. We're beginning to do spend money on it, do work on it, and I'm just not willing to commit that. I do think that that something needs to happen with this land. It is council-owned property, and we need to do something with it. We can't just let it sit there as a white elephant for another 25 years. And I do wonder if an options paper that explored this, that put this option up against selling it off to a developer to do what they will with it, or putting it back into farmland, whatever the other options available to us are, we haven't really explored that, and I think that conversation is worthy of having. But in terms of this in front of us, committing us to spending $500,000 on the what-ifs, and the traffic,
Would you like an extension?
yes, please,
Granted.
and the traffic that we would commit to passing through Mooroopna and Murchison. I just cannot support this today. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Spinks. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'm really a little, really undecided here, but I want to support the recommendation because I can foresee an investment, a safe investment here. The site is secured, the land has been rezoned, and all the planning matters associated with the subdivision of the land. So it is, it is an attractable investment. And I hear the comments, and I have some concerns. I do have some concerns that I'd like to see some commitment of stage 1 of the bypass being committed to it as well. We don't know what's going to happen with that. The need for consultation with Mooroopna, the community plan steering group, they probably need that consultation too as well. And, I've got my, I've got the Aboriginal, cooperative out there too as well. I'm just a little bit undecided in which way I go, but I don't know whether to vote for or against that, basically. So, anyway.
Thank you, councillor James. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Adam.
Yes, Mayor Sally. I'm a little bit like councillor James. We need to do something with this place now. $500,000 or up to $500,000 for detailed design. The site has already got a special zoning attached. In that world, obviously, a potential developer would see that as more attractive than just a piece of agricultural land that needs to have these zones applied. What's the detailed design going to actually look? We'll put forward our own design, which may not actually fit the criteria of a potential tenant. They may want a different setup to what we're proposing. I realise detailed design is not just about the block size, it's more about the infrastructure in and around that area. Yeah, as I said, I don't know. I'll make my mind in a couple of seconds when you ask for a vote, Mr. Mayor, but
There we go.
there's pros and cons, both sides. We've already spent quite a bit of money over the years with previous plans, but we also have received some money in return. We've leased that land out at not a huge amount of money, but we've probably recouped our costs on that land each year, I'd assume. So, yeah, I'll let you know in a couple of minutes.
Thanks for that. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Thank you, and I think, again, I have to be honest, 3 weeks before, I was quite convinced, and I still am, like Councillor Adam and Councillor James, that what is the best option. Because, and then there were certain questions, because we've had those discussions, certain questions were raised by Councillor Spinks and Councillor, and I think we did not get a chance to relook at this project through those lenses. And before we could do it, of course, we were facing this emergency that we are all in at the moment. So my position is that, yes, previous to that, and we've had those site visits also, but after everything that was discussed at one point, there were certain other questions that were raised, and I do not have answers, and had not had the opportunity to go back and follow up on those questions. So I'm also feeling very sort of divided and unsure which way to go. It is $500,000, but the questions that Councillor Spinks has raised and Councillor Adam had also raised in one of the emails need to be answered, and I need to make sure that I'm satisfied with those answers. And unfortunately, due to this emergency, I did not get a chance to follow up on that. So basically, that's the position, and I'm just maybe a question to the CEO about the urgency and the cutoff date. Is there something where we can defer this for another month and go back and look at all those questions again and then come back? I'll be more...
Lay it on the table.
I prefer not to get into the debate no, I prefer not to.
Yeah. Unless you need
Leave it to the
clarification on something, then we'll just go to the vote as per normal, unless you require clarification on something.
Well, that's the thing, if I don't get before the questions and before, if I don't get the answers, I will not go ahead, because I won't have all the answers. But at the same time, I understand the significance of this project, and I understand, and I feel that, yes, council does have a responsibility in making sure that we are getting investments in our region and making this region more livable and from the economic development point of view. It is a very significant project, but unfortunately, a couple of those questions that are not answered, and.
Well, I guess I'd take that position, Mr Mayor, because we have had detailed briefings and we have provided information, and I understood the councillors realised the significance of what we're talking about, but there you go.
Yeah, and that after all of that, there were certain questions raised, and before, speaking for myself, before I could follow up and ask, and our attention was elsewhere because of this emergency.
All right.
That's my position, and yeah.
Thank you, councillor. Before we go to the vote, councillor Dobson's right to reply. I just want to add my thoughts to it. It is 100% our core business to invest into infrastructure that creates jobs for our community. Because without jobs and without business, we don't have a community. It's very simple. I think this is exciting, and it's a legacy item for our council. And sometimes you have to take a risk, and it can create a legacy. One way or another, we're going to determine what the future looks like for GV Link, and we're investing or considering investing $500,000 to determine its long-term position. And I hope that by this investment that we attract businesses to our region that trucks and create more jobs and further enhance our position as the food bowl of Australia, and further our position as a logistics hub of Australia, not regional Victoria, but Australia. We have real appetite in investment into our region, and I don't think we should be dismissing the investment of $500,000 of what could come. And you're right that if things invested in the early parts now and it doesn't work out, at least that this council will no doubt, I'm confident, determine the future of GV Link. So, very, very clear. We can either be like other regional cities and think we're open for business, or we can make a stance tonight and tell the Australian community and the business community that we are open for business. Very simple. Councillor Dobson, I'll give you a reply.
It's very difficult, Mayor Saleh, to say any more than what you've just said, because you've encapsulated the real reason why we're looking at this. We do have an investment attraction department, and the purpose of that department is to attract this sort of investment. And we've done it pretty well so far. You can take the SAM complex, for example. What a terrific investment that is going to be, the attraction that's brought. The MOVE complex out at Kialla, which we've invested in. Now, council officers, as the report says here, has been furthering discussions with both Australian and Victorian governments on the potential to repurpose other existing funding to GV Link, which would assist in the construction costs of some of the road infrastructure, for example. So this is not just an issue, this is not just an investment that the council are handling on their own. We've got other partners, including governments, state and federal, who are looking at it also. So if we want the parks, and we want the paths, and we want the children's playgrounds and all that sort of stuff which costs money, we've got to get the money from somewhere. In the long term, this is the sort of investment that has a return on capital like no other, in my opinion. And in 30 or 40 years, when all that park is fully developed out there with a rail head going through it, down to the ports or even into Sydney, and with a bypass going through it, we'll wonder why we even had the debate about it. So I really do commend it to the councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour?
Okay.
Against?
Division, please, Ms.
Motion carried. Those in favour? Councillor Sali, Councillor Brophy, Councillor James, Councillor Adam, Councillor Dobson, Councillor Abdullah. Those against? Councillor Summer, Councillor Spinks. Councillors, we now go to page 98 of the agenda, item 13.1, Our Sporting Future Funding, round 1, 2022-2023.
I have a conflict there, Mayor Sali.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy.
Thanks. We're the best. What's that? Report.
Councillors, again, we are on page 98 and 99 of the agenda, item 15.1, Our Sporting Future Funding, round 1, 2022-2023. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor Sali. I'd like to move the recommendation to a motion as it is printed on pages 98 and 99 of the agenda.
Councillor Spinks, can I please have someone second that motion? Councillor Adam.
Motion, Mayor Sali.
Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to them?
It's self-explanatory. It's a lot of different awards, grants we've awarded to all these different organisations. Sport's obviously important to our region. We have the Sports City, and this is just feeding into these grassroots organisations that helps build our reputation. Obviously involves a lot of youth in our community, so look, it's all great. I won't go through them one by one. There's a variety of different clubs there. I'm sure they appreciate the funding. We'd love to give them more if we could, but at this stage, that's what we can afford, and that's going to be well appreciated by these clubs.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Can we get Councillor Brophy back, please? Thank you, Councillor. We will now go to page 107 of the agenda, which is item 14, confidential management reports, 14 point designation of confidentiality of information, attachments, no action required. Councillors, we now go to page 108 of the agenda, item 15.1.1, councillor activities for September 2022. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I have someone put that forward as a motion?
Sally, I'd like to move the recommendation as written down on page 108, that the council receive and note the summary of the council's interactions and informal meetings of councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Can I have someone second that motion, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Not at any great length, Yes, Sally. It's itemised there. These are the engagement we've had with our communities. It's all listed. We hope to do a lot more now, moving forward.
Thank you.
To extend this, I can go through each one if you like.
It's your moment.
That's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Adam.
Process.
Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, Mayor Sali.
Are there any councillors that would like to
Saying what I'm saying.
motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 110 of the agenda, item 15.2, report on Murray-Darling Conference 2022. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor. Sally, yes, I'd like to move the recommendation 15.1.2, report on Murray-Darling Conference 2022. The recommendation is that the council receive and note Councillor Jeffrey Dobson's report to Murray-Darling Conference 2022.
Thank you, James.
The motion, Councillor Mayor Sally, sorry.
Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Look, again, I want to thank Councillor Dobson for his concise and informative report. As always, it's always very detailed. This council is extremely fortunate to have our voice and a voice being involved in the all-important waterways labyrinth within Victoria and New South Wales. At the recent Murray-Darling conference, Councillor Dobson had the opportunity to visit some of the all-important Upper Murray storage reservoirs and at full storage. So unfortunately, he couldn't control the water up there at that particular time coming down our way. But that is really important because that's where a lot of our water comes from both the Murray River and the Goulburn. Having had a view of Dartmouth Dam, and I'm quite green with envy, Dartmouth Dam is actually spilling over at the moment and is quite a spectacular sight. But also you've got Lake Eildon up in the Highlands as well, and up in the upper country in the upper Murray. Anyway, I'm rambling on there, but I just wanted to thank you, Councillor Dobson, for your report, and there were a number of political hierarchy attending this conference that you were at, so I've no doubt that you would have been raising our interest with them, so at that particular conference. So thank you, Mayor Sally.
Councillor James. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only to say that I completely echo Councillor James's words.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion?
Can I just make one comment before we go, just in relation to an addendum to this report? And it talked about an additional 450 gigalitres of environmental water that Honourable Tanya Plibersek said that she had to find. It was announced on the ABC today that they in fact are going to find that 450 gigalitres of water, and I want this announced, I want this council to be well aware of it, because we want to take action on it, that they are going to take it off the agricultural community and communities within the Murray-Darling Basin. They are not looking at more efficiencies in order to find this extra 450 gigalitres, which we cannot afford to give them. Now, I'm trying to get Tanya Plibersek, the Honourable Tanya Plibersek, to come to Shepparton, because I want her to see what we've done in the Murray-Darling, the Goulburn Murray Irrigation District in terms of efficient delivery of water and on-farm water supplies. So I think it's very important that we take this information now and we get quite vocal about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion?
Sorry. I thought there was somebody else that wanted to before me. Was that you?
I was going to say I look forward to Tanya Plibersek's visit to Shepparton.
All right. Yes. Look, I was just, thank you, Mayor Sally. I was just going to say congratulations again, Councillor Dobson, in being so vocal in this particular space here. I want to extol your virtues, except it's getting very late this evening, so I'll be very brief. It is very detailed, and it provides us with a really good understanding of what's happening, and we are so fortunate to have a strong representation in this particular space, because water is absolutely vital to our area, absolutely, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No. I'd also extend the invite to the Minister in control of our water and ask you to come to the Food Bowl of Australia and explain here how what you're proposing will benefit the greater good of our region. So I look forward to
Full impact neutrality.
Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 113 of the agenda, item 15.2. Council Committee received 15 notice of motion amendment decision nil received. Item 16, documents for signing and sealing nil received. Item 17, urgent business not included on the agenda. Councillors, is there any additional urgent business? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I have a motion put forward for urgent business that the council defer the 15th of November 2022 scheduled council meeting to the 29th of November 2022 due to the impacts on council resources resulting from the ongoing flood emergency.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Can I have a councillor second that motion?
I'd second that motion.
Councillor Dobson.
Sally.
Thank you. In favour? Motion carried. Before we close the meeting, I want to take this opportunity to just very briefly thank the community on what's taken place over the course of the last 2 weeks. That seeing the flooding across the region over the past week has been difficult for everyone. Thousands of properties have been affected by floodwaters across Greater Shepparton. And while this has been an extremely tough time for us all, residents have remained calm and patient. And the community spirit shown has been unlike no other. On behalf of my fellow councillors, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone across the region for helping out in whatever way they can. Whether that was through checking in on family, friends and neighbours, helping out with the massive task of filling sandbags, delivering food and supplies to isolated households, or helping out with the huge clean-up task. Your efforts have been remarkable. It is through difficult times like this where our community truly shines, and we have shown just how resilient we are. Thank you to my fellow councillors and Deputy Mayor at the time, Anthony Brophy, for the support you gave me over the past 2 weeks. Also, a big thank you to Marianne Conti, who is our Executive Assistant, for the power of work that you've done. Quite often I would get told, have you slept yet? And I can tell you now she was going to bed later than what I was and was up well before me, so thank you, Maz. Well done, and thank you to Peter Harriet and the whole team at the Greater Shepparton City Council. Thank you. Thank you to my wife, Lydia, kids and extended family for your support to me over the past 2 weeks as well. Most of all, Greater Shepparton, thank you. We still have a long way to go, but to this point, as I mentioned, we have been remarkable. So again, thank you and good night. Thank you. I will now close the meeting at 9:17 p.m. One, please.